Are you catching on yet? I hope you are. The grift is real, baby, and it is alive, and it is well. 6:04 on a rainy Friday morning. Thanks for starting your day and ending your week with us right here on KCMO Talk Radio. Not even 48 hours after polls closed in Kansas City to renew a little 1% earnings tax, where you were told, hey, if we don't get this money from you, the city's done. City's finished. You got no cops. Forget putting out a fire in this town. Forget calling 911. There's no one there. Trash pickup. Come on. No one's picking up your trash. This city's going to hell in a handbasket unless you fork over that 1% earnings tax. So by a 75% margin, Kansas City did, as it continues on, dating back to 1963. And yes, it'll be also paid by those who do not live but work in Kansas City, Missouri. And less than 48 hours after the polls close, Kansas City decides, oh my goodness, look at this. We're going to figure out how to redirect $600 million to help the Royals build a new stadium. Now, from day one, I have said what? The teams have a business to run. It is their job to get the deal and the best deal that they can. It is the politicians' job to be responsible fiscally on behalf of their taxpayer and look out for their taxpayer and look out for their city and stop picking winners and losers. And with this ordinance that was introduced yesterday or was announced yesterday by the mayor of Kansas City to help the Royals build a $1.9 billion stadium at Washington Square Park right next to Union Station and Crown Center, there's nothing that convinces me that this is a good deal for the taxpayer of Kansas City. Nothing whatsoever. For a city that supposedly is running at a deficit, for a city that's crying poor every single chance they can get, they magically have figured out how to fund up to $600 million on a stadium. Please, make that make sense, because it's not making a lot of sense to me. And I know how, we all get how the game is played. Seriously, I mean, you got the state of Missouri that's going to kick in about 50% on this deal. But I talked to a lot of people in Jeff City yesterday, and they're like, we don't know how the math is working. Not clear to us how this is going to work out for Kansas City. And the most telling part of yesterday was that this is not what happened in Kansas. This was not the dog and pony show of Clark Hunt and Mark Donovan and Laura Kelly and the House and Senate leadership slapping each other on the back, sipping the champagne and saying, boy, we got him and we got him good. There was no sign of John Sherman yesterday. There was no sign of anybody with the Kansas City Royals. There was a statement, and even the statement by the Royals yesterday was fairly tepid. The statement from the Royals read that the team appreciates the work of our city's leadership, the mayor, the city manager, and the city council, as they take important steps towards continued economic development for our city. We're grateful for their engagement in the process, as well as for the critical work of the state of Missouri, and look forward to more detailed conversations as we consider solutions that are best for our team, our fans, and our community. It's not like John Sherman was down at City Hall yesterday, waving the flag. He was nowhere to be found, which tells me that there are still a few hurdles left on this deal for the Kansas City Royals getting down to Washington Square Park. Mm-hmm. A lot of details still to come, a lot of hurdles still to come, including obviously getting this ordinance passed, which, interestingly enough, you have the most conservative member of the city council, Nathan Willett, and the most liberal member of the city council, Jonathan Duncan, coming together and being like, yeah, not so fast there, Mr. Mayor. Not so fast on this one. But the mayor obviously is convinced that he's got the votes that he needs to get this ordinance passed to redirect $600 million to build the Royals a baseball stadium downtown. We'll see. Yesterday, he talked to many different media outlets. By the way, the one time I don't ask him about the stupid stadium downtown is the day that he actually rolls out an ordinance, because I'm too busy asking him about the Kansas City Star investigation, or his investigation into the Kansas City Star. And what was the other big topic?
Shooters.
Yes, that's right. The shooters, which also passed yesterday.
Single serve, 7-6.
Yeah, they got that done too yesterday. So here was the mayor talking to a bunch of people yesterday. Where was the clip I wanted, Mark? I just popped in a clip at the last minute. It was from, yes. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is from Carrington Harrison, I would say the best sports radio host in Kansas City that does it full time, at least. Kietzman's obviously the best, but for a guy that's on traditional sports radio, he had Mayor Lucas on yesterday. He asked him, hey, how you paying for this?
$600 million, and it's a lot, and it's an important investment. It would come from redirections that exist in some ways today, right? Today we have two teams that play out of Truman Sports Complex. They generate a certain amount of tax revenue, sales taxes and beyond, and our calculation is a conservative one, but is based off of what we're generating today from baseball. So that is estimate one. We will throw in infrastructure investment in connection with it. The state of Missouri is going to be an important partner.
Okay. So he's going to redirect monies that already are somewhat being made, I guess, to then pay off the stadium. So once again, if some of those monies are already going into the coffers of Kansas City as is, then that's money that's not otherwise going to basic services for Kansas Cityans, which, because an earnings tax was just renewed, might give them a little more flexibility to do something like this. So when they do this whole we're redirecting stuff, well, in the case of the Royals, they're already a business in your city, right? So you're making money off of them. You're making money off of sales tax revenues. You're obviously making some income tax revenues. You're making an earnings tax. You're making all this money already. And when you say we're redirecting monies that already are coming in from the Royals, what that means is you're giving up that money. That's what it means. Now, is it possible that, yes, with new public and private investment, you might have a windfall of other revenue coming your way? Yeah, it's entirely possible. It is. If you do a nice job down there by Crown Center and you have some type of new ballpark-ish village, it could be pretty cool. It's got potential. How much of that, though, is just redirecting people from power and light from different parts of the Kansas City metro or Kansas City itself, and it's not necessarily new money? You are taking from existing revenue. Let's be clear on the game here. That's what's going on. If you like that, that's okay. But let's at least have the conversation as to what exactly is happening here. You're taking existing revenue and you're applying it to the ballpark, which means that revenue is not being used for things it was previously being used for in Kansas City. If you think that's a good investment, once again, make the case. That's your prerogative. You're allowed to feel that way. You might be a Kansas Cityan and say, you know what? If I'm getting screwed on all these taxes, I might as well get a new baseball stadium downtown. Cool. Great. Whatever. That's totally fine. But you got to at least have the real conversation as to how the game is being played. And all I saw yesterday from Kansas City media was, pomp and circumstance on TV, roll out the red carpet, sports radio, roll out the red carpet. No one thinks about this at all from a semi-critical perspective. And my only criticism is not of the team. It's not of John Sherman. It's not of the Royals. It's the city of Kansas City saying, boy, that Chiefs deal is a raw deal. All right, let's roll out our own terrible deal while we're at it.
I kind of felt like no news is news here because they could have probably said this last year, couldn't they? You think the e-tax was that big of a deal, part of it?
It's a good question.
I kind of don't, but I may be missing that point.
It's a good question, John. That's a good question.
You said this a year ago.
Yeah, could they have done this? Like, why?
January?
It's been 2 years since the tax or the failure. Here's what I think part of it was. The Chiefs were the ego play. They had to figure out what to do and how to keep the Chiefs first. And also, a year ago, you still had Frank White as the county executive. So that was probably a holdup, too, to the whole thing. But here's what I will say about this deal. if you said to me, Pete, do you want 81 nights a year of Major League Baseball if you're going to give away economic incentive packages, or do you want 8 football games a year? I'll take the baseball. The Chiefs are the ego play because of how good they've been and the NFL and Arrowhead. But if you are looking at it from just a pure economic development play and building up an urban core, I will say that the Royals deal, just right out of the gates, is better from the standpoint of building a public-private partnership and investment because you do get 81 nights a year. Now, I heard the mayor say they're going to have 300 nights a year of activity down there. I mean, what does that mean? 300 nights a year, what are you getting, a Tom Petty cover band, on a Tuesday night? Like, I don't know what that means, but that seems a little excessive. Either way, it is a better economic development investment on baseball than it is on 8 football games a year out in Arrowhead West.
Asterisk on your 8 games because we want to play internationally, don't we?
Oh, I know.
We may lose a game.
We may.
Be looking at 7 games sometimes.
Hey, don't worry. We're going to get a Final Four every other year out in Wyandotte County.
Forgot about that.
That's what I was told, right? 913-408-7957. I want to welcome you in. If you are a Kansas Citian in particular, and you just renewed the earnings tax, and once again, this is not a subsidy from the earnings tax for the stadium. That's not what's going on here. I got some people, insinuating that's what I was going for in a couple of social media posts yesterday. I'm not saying that. But the timeline here is part of the story. If they rolled this out 2 weeks ago ahead of an e-tax, how might that have played out differently? There's a reason they waited until 2 days after the earnings tax got renewed for 5 years to roll out this plan for the Kansas City Royals. That's not by mistake, okay? It's not. 913-408-7957. Have your voice heard as we kick it off on a Friday morning. Pete Mundo with you on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We also have an interesting World Cup business update we'll get to this hour on KCMO.
From Lenexa to Lee Summit, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Hey, Pete, how much money is Kansas City collecting in earnings taxes per year, especially when it comes to the players with the Royals? Well, that's a very good question. I was talking to somebody about this right now, or last night I had this conversation with somebody who has been very high up in Kansas City government, and it's not as much as you think. It's about $4 million a year in earnings taxes alone from the Royals. $4 million per year. For a city that has a $2.5 billion budget, $4 million is not really a very big number, right? I mean, just think about it. $4 million? I know it sounds like a lot. Whoa, $4 million. It's not really that much money all in. It's not. But, it's $4 million more. But that money is now just going to be staying in Kansas City and potentially redirected after yesterday. The mayor of Kansas City announced an ordinance that he wants to introduce and propose to take $600 million and redirect it to pay off a $1.9 billion ballpark that the Royals would build downtown right next to Union Station and Crown Center in Washington Square Park. And the timing is very clear. It's obvious what's going on here. There will be no vote of Kansas Cityans to make this happen. This would be, if it gets passed, will just be then basically happening because the state of Missouri will chip in about 50% of the stadium. They'll basically give the Royals back the money that they generate for the state. And Mayor Lucas is more or less saying the same thing here. A good part of what already is made for the city of Kansas City by the Royals will then get redirected to pay off the stadium with the hopes that down the road they can generate a lot more economic development and more income elsewhere. That is part of the goal. That's part of the plan here. That's how this is going to be rolled out. Mark is first up, 913-408-7957. Mark's on KCMO. Hey, Mark, good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
I was talking to John and asking him about how much money is actually collected per year on that Kansas City earnings tax. If you kind of have any soft number on what it is.
It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I want to say it's $300 to $400 million right in there. So that's the number that I've seen. 375 is what I recall seeing on the local news on that. So 375 million.
Gotcha. And as I told him, they've actually been collecting that money since I was born, and I didn't even realize it until 3 or 4 years ago that there was even a Kansas City earnings tax. So.
Now, were you paying it all these years? Were you working in Kansas City and not living in Kansas City, paying it and not realizing you were paying it?
Oh, I'm sure I've been paying it for at least half of my working career. Yes.
Yeah, but you were not a Kansas. Yeah. Well, I feel for you, man.
Living in Oak Grove, we've got potholes and everything else out there, but I've got to make sure and take care of Kansas City roads. That's more important.
Well, are you even taking care of them really when you think about it?
Right, I completely understand. We definitely need to get somebody on board to start boycotting that, because I think they're like everybody else. They need to learn to balance their books and keep their house in order, just like you and I have to.
Yep, but why do that? They can sit there and say, "Hey, it passed overwhelmingly, 75%." Thank you very much, there, Mark. Have a great weekend, my man. Why do that? Why do that when the people are going to vote for it 75-25 every single time? 913-408-7957. Kansas City, that's where Paul is this morning. Paul, good morning.
Hey, Pete, how you doing? Yeah, I was just wondering if Mayor Q called up the Platte County Sheriff and got the skinny on how to move money around.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, what's interesting on that front, yesterday, with all this drama with the Platte County Sheriff, he was with Tony Luchtenmeyer, who announced he's running for Platte County prosecutor yesterday. Tony's going to come on the show at 7 o'clock this morning. I got to ask him, like, do you want to be side by side right now with a sheriff who just said, I'm keeping $300,000 that you guys accidentally gave me and not giving it back to the county and the taxpayer? Because I think that's a bad look, Paul.
Oh, I do too. I do too. And this moving $600 million around, I'm seeing Power and Light all over again. And Crown Center, you got the Irish Festival on Labor Day weekend. How's that affect that? This thing, I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be asked about this. But this moving money around by these guys is just. It just doesn't look right. Something's wrong with this thing.
Well, that's how it goes, but don't worry.
Yes,
it's economic development voodoo math. It always is.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Pete.
I just, here's the other part of it, too. Is there going to be like a TIF district, like a kind of like what Kansas did with the Star Bond district? It's not going to be that big.
Kind of seemed like it could be.
There's got to be some kind of district, and we don't know what those lines are. The mayor kind of took a shot at Kansas yesterday saying, it's not going to be like multi-county district. Okay, but what's it going to be? Once again, we don't know. There still are more questions than answers, and that's why the Royals just put out a statement yesterday saying, sounds good, let's see what you got. They were not doing cartwheels and showing their faces yesterday. They got to see the Kansas City Council actually do something. Which, by the way, this deal with the World Cup, I have some details on empty storefronts we'll talk about next.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO.
This headline was in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. Kansas City spends $650 million to become America's soccer capital. Noting here, Missouri City is preparing for its moment on the global stage during the World Cup when it expects visitors to outnumber residents. They note here in this article in the Wall Street Journal that the metro with 2.2 million residents is the smallest of 16 host cities. Over the past 15 years, the region has poured $650 million into building world-class training facilities and stadiums in an effort to become America's soccer capital. The city had a budget of $165 million for the World Cup coming up this summer. Of course, there's a new airport. There are buses that are going to be shuttling guests all over town. And as has been noted by people involved, they believe it will be like having 6 Super Bowls, and they expect 650,000 visitors. Now, do with that information what you want. I think that's a very generous number. I don't know what the number is going to be, but I know this much. There are still people who are trying to get on Airbnb and figure out how much money they can make. We've heard from Airbnb hosts who have said, yeah, I mean, it's certainly ahead of a normal summer, but they're not necessarily feeling like this is, unbelievable, can't miss opportunity. There have been different TV reports suggesting that. And then you've got this story yesterday from KCTV5. Kansas City grant program fills empty storefronts ahead of the World Cup. Now, we told you about this grant program when it came out. You want to talk about an all-time scam and a waste of money, this is it. Kansas City has empty storefronts downtown. They are now basically paying companies to fill those empty storefronts during this summer to make it look good in parts of downtown Kansas City. The Open Doors program received 463 applications. 52 applicants shortlisted as finalists for the program. The city now has 14 active storefronts supporting 15 businesses, and 6 more are about to open. Well, KCTV5 talked to Birdie's, a lingerie boutique. Some may call it Mark's favorite spot in Kansas City. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not.
No comment.
Okay. Well, Birdie's was interviewed by KCTV5, and it was a little uncomfortable at times. It was a little awkward, but it also was very telling. Take a listen.
2 decades in the lingerie business. Keep things light.
It can be as simple or as complicated as you want.
Yeah. We want people to leave feeling beautiful and decorated.
Co-owners Peregrine Honig and Alexis Bergraby need more space.
We've been looking to move for a long, long time.
A grant through Casey's Open Doors program will move them right across the street.
We're really pleased to be in the neighborhood.
The program's goal:
fill empty spaces.
Just in time for the World Cup.
There's a lot of people that I know that have gotten this grant.
The city says more than 400 people metro-wide applied for that program, and they have 52 finalists. The city now has 14 active storefronts supporting 15 businesses, with 6 more about to open.
Woo!
I guess this would be time to tell you that I applied, and we have a Mundo in the Morning store going up down in, we're going to sublease with the Trump store down in Branson. There you go. Get them to come up with us. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, that's amazing, man. I love that, John. You are always one step ahead. I love that. So the Open Doors program in Kansas City is for small business grants up to $10,000 for startup costs, covering up to 80% of rent for vacant downtown storefronts to operate pop-ups during the World Cup. So this lingerie store, Birdie's, has been one of the recipients of this grant, and now they're going to have a couple of bathrooms versus just one. They'll have this primetime real estate right there downtown. So they're very happy. They got to sell a lot of lingerie, I guess, during the World Cup, though, to try to hold on to that location, because here's the thing. They're going to have to eventually pay their own way. They will get this grant. They will get money from the taxpayer to move their business to a better location, to make the city look better during the World Cup. but eventually they got to foot their own bill here. So it might work. I hope it works. I hope it works for them. But think about what's going on. The city is telling you this is going to be a windfall of revenue for small business. Yet they're also paying small business, which is what they're doing with your taxpayer money. They're paying small business to move their business to a better location to make the city look good this summer. And then after that, you know what? Let's hope it works out. Let's hope you can keep paying your rent and you can keep selling lingerie. And, all I keep thinking about is the Cisco thong song. That's just, it's in my head going back to 2000 or whatever that was. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John. That's all I keep hearing in my head as I talk about the story. And I'm like, this is not good policy. It's not. Once again, you don't pass the earnings tax, you got no money. The city's broke, you got no fire, you got no police. Yet, what are we doing? We're giving money to business to go to different storefronts downtown to look better during the World Cup. We're redirecting $600 million potentially to a new Royal Stadium. That was rolled out yesterday in an ordinance by the mayor's office. And all this is like, once again, with the backdrop of renew the 1% earnings tax or the city's going under. But we got money here, first off, to pay to random lingerie businesses. God bless them. It's America. I'm glad they can sell a lot of lingerie and actually make a living off of it. That's fantastic. But I'm also not sure that's the business that's going to really pop during the World Cup. Although it could go either way. I mean, I don't know. These Europeans get a little weird. So maybe it's a great business for the World Cup. I have no clue. I don't know what to expect from these folks from the Netherlands. They might be going wild looking for lingerie stores. In which case, Birdies is going to, do a big number this summer. I'll be pulling for him. But from the standpoint of public policy and what to do with taxpayer money, man, this ain't it. No way. 913-408-7957 is the text line and the studio line right here on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, did they say the business is basically moving across the street? Isn't that just going to leave another store vacant? Does that defeat the purpose of what the goal is here from the city of Kansas City? I don't know if they're moving just across the street. The business has operated on 18th Street since the 2000s. They're on 18th Street in downtown. They received a grant through the program, and they'll use the grant to move across the street into a larger space. So, yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. They're going to leave another storefront empty. So what's that really worth?
Oh, by the way, Cirillas is renting your old space.
Oh, my goodness. It's just, if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry at some of these stories because I just want to bang my head against the wall sometimes. But, hey, it's a Friday morning. I know it's raining, but we still got a lot to celebrate here. We got the Artemis II coming down this morning. I saw that, and I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. I'll get to more on that coming up next hour.
It's a good morning. We've started with visual pictures of lingerie rather than other things.
Yeah, so that's true.
I'm with it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm down with that. I mean, whatever you guys want to think about this morning, I'm game.
Get a Teddy in the Netherlands colors. You need to make sure you've got a lot of orange down there.
Absolutely, man. There's no doubt about it. You've got the Masters underway as well. I've got to do 7 more hours of radio today, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll be filling in for the Vince Show. I was disappointed, though. I didn't get any calls from Kansas City. We got calls from Chicago, from D.C.
We told everybody.
I know. Where are you guys?
Come on, man.
You got to step up for me today, okay?
Represent.
Exactly right. I mean, a lot of you were texting. I checked our text line here on KCMO, and a lot of you were obviously saying nice things. But we took bunch of calls yesterday, and we got basically heavy Chicago and heavy D.C. But I was waiting for one of our regulars from Kansas City to go national with me yesterday, and it didn't happen. So today's the day. I'm challenging you when I fill in for the Vince Show today. Make sure you call up the show.
Come on, Victor. You could be heard across 4 time zones.
Exactly. I mean, you've got hundreds of radio affiliates carrying the Vince Show. Today is your day to go national. All right? It's today. So don't let me down. I also found out yesterday the Vince Show's carried by a station I used to work for in Northwest Oklahoma, Z92 Radio in Woodward, Oklahoma. I had a couple of people texting me, hey, it's good to hear you filling in for Vince. I didn't even know that they were on down there. So you're going to be heard by a lot of people today if you call in. And I may just have to weave in some Kansas City topics on a Friday.
Ray Stevens was excited to hear you on WLS.
I know.
In Chicago.
I got a text from our old boy Ray Stevens, and he said, "Good to hear you on the Big 89 WLS in Chicago." I was like, "Well, it's good to be here, Ray. Thanks very much, buddy." He's doing well. Ray used to do middays for us here on KCMO, and now he's doing mornings on WLS in his hometown of Chicago. We'll get to our 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour, coming up on KCMO.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
6:48, good morning. A rainy morning so far to start the day in Kansas City. The rain will move out in the next couple of hours. Then it will just be cloudy all afternoon. Maybe a chance of rain later this afternoon, but we should be good until the weekend when more rain, yes, is coming our way. Let's get to it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Top of the list. Mayor Lucas announcing a proposal for a funding plan of $600 million to help the Royals build a $1.9 billion stadium at Washington Square Park. Now, this did not pass a city council. It was just announced that the mayor would be introducing an ordinance where the city would commit up to $600 million through bonding, financed primarily through economic activity redirections from the stadium and surrounding development. This per the mayor's office. So there has been some blowback on the city council from this plan and this rollout yesterday. We'll talk to Nathan Willett next hour at 7:30 and get his perspective as a city councilman as to what this deal is all about and how this is going to go down and what exactly it's going to look like, because there still are many questions around it when it comes to how it's going to play out. The mayor also saying that if they can get this ordinance passed, the target is 2031 for opening day, but the mayor even said yesterday he might be targeting opening day of 2030 for a potential new stadium down at Washington Square Park. So that was obviously the huge news yesterday. We'll now wait to see how it plays out.
Number 2.
Next up in hour 6 at 6. You know, it's a Friday. Screw it. I'm going to the Masters. Okay? Not literally going, but that's where I'm going on number 2. Right now, the leaderboard looks like Sam Burns and Rory McIlroy tied at 5 under. This is a great leaderboard. You got Jason Day and Patrick Reed 2 back. Kurt Kitayama is also in that mix at 3 under. And then Shane Lowry, Xander Schauffele, Justin Rose, and Scotty Scheffler all at 2 under as well. So it is an outstanding leaderboard. KU's Gary Woodland is sitting there at 1 under. Mark's cooking up a parlay for buy, sell, hold coming up later today at 8:45. Can't wait for that. And it's going to be a great weekend. You know, it's going to be a rainy weekend across Kansas City. It's a good weekend to sit back and watch some golf. Although we've got our first soccer game for the first and second grade girls tomorrow. So I'm hoping it doesn't get rained out, because we've had 4 practices, spring break. Then we had, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, but we had a bye the first week. There were no games last week because of Easter. So this is our 4th practice that we had yesterday. We're hoping for the first game tomorrow. Gave out the jerseys yesterday. Took them forever to pick a team name, and I'm not sure we're going to play the game. But we'll have to wait and see if the weather holds up. It's going to be a great weekend, though.
Number 3.
All right, let's go to overseas. Israel and Hezbollah were trading strikes ahead of high-stakes U.S.-Iran talks that are set for tomorrow in Pakistan. So, you know, this is something that has become a sticking point now in this ceasefire. Is Lebanon part of the ceasefire? It was initially reported that they were. Then it's like, well, they're not. Netanyahu did not want Lebanon to be part of the ceasefire because of Hezbollah, which is, of course, the terrorist organization that operates out of Lebanon that obviously Israel's very concerned about. Hezbollah is funded by Iran, but you also have a couple million Christians in Lebanon. So this is obviously a fine line in terms of how you handle this. And Iran thought that Lebanon was part of the truce, part of the ceasefire. And then the United States said, no, it's a misunderstanding. They're not part of it. But then also yesterday, Netanyahu said they were going to back off at the United States' request to try to calm things down before this high-stakes meeting tomorrow taking place in Pakistan between J.D. Vance, the United States, and Iran. So I don't know what exactly – I mean, no one really knows what's going on here right now. But the fact that Israel and Hezbollah are trading strikes over the last several hours is obviously not what you would want to see happen from the standpoint of trying to calm things down and find a deal ahead of this high-stakes meeting tomorrow that obviously the entire world is going to be watching.
Number 4.
All right, next up in our 6 at 6, let's go to the Bahamas, where the husband of missing American boater Lynette Hooker took a tumble off a police boat while he was being transported by cops in the Bahamas. Is that not the most Bahamas story you've ever heard? Man. He claimed he suffered knee pain after he was rescued, according to his lawyer. Brian Hooker, 59, fell off the police boat while handcuffed this week, a day after he was arrested in connection with his wife's disappearance, his attorney told Fox News yesterday. He was wearing a life vest and floundered in the water until police hauled him back onto the boat. I mean, this guy, he's obviously arrested. He's in custody. They haven't charged him with anything yet, but he's clearly a suspect with his wife now missing in the Bahamas. The attorney said his client suffered some knee pain and abrasions and was taken to a local hospital for treatment. So now this guy's turning himself into a victim while his wife is missing. Wow. Okay. See how that works out for you, big guy.
Number 5.
All right. Next up in our 6 at 6, tragedy over in St. Louis. Steak and Shake worker was killed during an argument over onion rings in the drive-thru. I kid you not. Can't make this stuff up. A woman was shot and killed while working the drive-thru at Steak and Shake in St. Louis. St. Louis County Police said they were called to the Steak and Shake after 2 workers were hurt in a shooting. A male worker was injured, and another worker, later identified as Chauncia Lachelle Meekins, did not survive. Police said a confrontation happened in the drive-thru, and the driver fired a gun through the window. Meekins' mother said the argument was over onion rings, and her daughter was just weeks away from celebrating her 33rd birthday. St. Louis County Police are continuing to look for the suspected shooter. The woman had only worked at the restaurant for about 3 months and did not have any issues. And, of course, they've got a Crime Stoppers hotline they're asking you to call on the St. Louis side of the state.
Number 6.
All right, last up in our 6 at 6, Hunter Biden wants a cage match against Donald Trump's sons, Eric and Don Jr. I kid you not. TMZ had the story. I know this is where we are in America today, where the former first son is challenging the current first sons to a cage match. Hunter just wants his stuff back from the White House. I think that's what this is really about. Don Jr. and Eric were like, don't worry, buddy, we'll get you those baggies back as soon as we find them. And he's getting pissed off that he hasn't gotten his little baggies back from the White House. But, maybe this could be a preview of this summer's UFC Freedom 250 taking place in the White House lawn. It can be opened up by Don Jr. versus Hunter Biden. That'd be quite a show. What do you think of that? That's the world that we live in today. Go figure. There's your 6 at 6 on KCMO. Coming up, Tony Luke DeMeyer makes a big announcement yesterday for Platte County. That is coming up. Nathan Willett on the stadium deal and much more in the 7 o'clock hour right here on KCMO. Well, yesterday, the announcement came from Parkville that State Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, representing Platte and Buchanan counties, is going to be making a move and running for Platte County prosecutor following the retirement of Eric Zond. And Tony Luetkemeyer joining us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Tony, good morning. Why the announcement to run for Platte County prosecutor?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Thanks for having me on the show. My reason for running for Platte County prosecutor is pretty simple. I want to do everything that I can to keep the citizens of Platte County safe. The Northland has a reputation for being a safe part of the city, and I look forward to continuing that tradition here in Platte County.
So yesterday, I know you were up there with the prosecutor, the current prosecutor, Eric Zond. You had the sheriff up there, Eric Holland, as well. How do you feel about the fact that, right now there is this turmoil up there with the sheriff's office keeping $300,000 that I guess they were accidentally given due to a clerical error by the auditor's office?
Honestly, a lot of the local courthouse news, I know generally what's going on, but I've not really been down in the weeds in that. And to be honest, the sheriff and I, we spent a fair amount of time together yesterday during the announcement, and it was not a topic that came up whenever we were together.
But is that one of those things from just the standpoint of, being a good steward of the taxpayer dollars, which I know you care about as a state senator? Is that something that as you go into this role, potentially as the prosecutor, is somewhat concerning?
My focus really, if I'm fortunate enough to be the Platte County prosecutor, is going to be to focus on the prosecutor's budget. I had a meeting yesterday with Eric Zond and with his first assistant up in Platte County, in Platte City with the prosecutors, all the assistant prosecutors in the office. And one of the things that I committed to them is I said, look, I'm going to do everything that I can to have good working relationships with everybody in the county, including the county commission, to make sure that we have the budget and resources that are needed for all those assistant prosecutors to do their job. And so, for right now, my focus is on, building and maintaining existing relationships within county government and making sure that the prosecutor's office is well taken care of.
What's the biggest issue, Tony, that you see that you want to obviously improve on, or the reason that you decided to run, that you said, hey, you know what? My background, my expertise can make the Platte County Prosecutor's Office even better and more effective than it's been?
Yeah, well, let me start off by saying, that we have a very well-run prosecuting attorney's office right now. We have some very dedicated public servants that give a lot of their time and effort and emotion and energy to doing that job and to doing it well. And the citizens of Platte County have been very well served. In terms of, the thing that I think I bring to the table, as you know, and a lot of your listeners from the show, my focus since I've been down in Jefferson City has been on supporting our brave men and women in law enforcement, making sure that we have criminal laws in Missouri that reflect the seriousness of the crimes that are committed, making sure that we've started to close the revolving door on violent criminals getting a slap on the wrist and being released back out into the streets. And so I think a lot of the relationships that I bring to the table in terms of with regional law enforcement, with other prosecutors around the state, I think that's going to be a big asset to the office. One of the things that Eric has been very involved in since I've been a state senator, and many of the elected prosecutors around the state are involved in, is something called the Missouri Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. And what they do is they come down to Jefferson City and advocate for policies that benefit the office of prosecutor and enhance public safety. And I think my role as floor leader, I would be able to step into that role and really be helpful, shaping some of the criminal law legislation with the Prosecuting Attorneys Association, even when I'm out of the Senate.
So that was going to be my next question. In terms of your background, obviously being a state senator, is there something else that you think that gives you when it comes to having a leg up in policy that's maybe not just good for Platte County residents, but also could benefit other residents in the Kansas City area as you look to Jackson County and Clay County and you try to, I would imagine, work with those prosecutors in some capacity as well? Because let's be honest, what's good for Jackson County, if you help Jackson County get cleaned up a little bit and help its prosecutor, and Melissa Johnson seems like she's certainly doing a much better job than her predecessor is, that's good for Platte County because a lot of that crime can spill over your way.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, crime is a regional problem. It doesn't really recognize borders. The difference between Platte County, Clay County versus Jackson County is a bridge and a river. So we need to make sure that we're dealing with crime in a comprehensive way in the entire Kansas City metropolitan area. And so I would look forward to partnering with other regional prosecutors around the Kansas City region. Also, working with the United States Attorney's Office. There's a lot of collaboration there with the county prosecutors in the KC Metro. And so I have a lot of those relationships already. I know a lot of those people, and I think that would be something that I would be able to bring to bear on day one, is just to be able to leverage those longstanding relationships.
Tony Luchtemeier is on KCMO. I do want to have you put on your state senator hat just for a moment here after what happened yesterday. The mayor, of course, announcing that he's going to try to move ahead with an ordinance that will provide $600 million to a Royal Stadium deal. We know the state of Missouri would probably kick in, give or take 50% of that as well. What was your reaction yesterday when you heard about this from the mayor's office?
I'm a little disappointed, that the mayor decided to. I mean, because as I understand his intention, it's to completely circumvent voters on this. So, in the immediate aftermath of the renewal of the earnings tax, he's now proposing, a $6 million taxpayer finance package where he's not even going to let it come to a public vote. I think that's wrong. I think that should be a position that's reconsidered. So I'm not supportive of what the mayor's trying to do. Now, why do you think it is, though? Do you think that, how the financing of all this ultimately is going to work, or you have a better idea than, the average person does based on being in the state legislature? What's your understanding on how they even get to that $600 million number, and do you think it's feasible? So I will say I do not know enough about the city's budget to be able to really get into the details of that. I do know, I think there's a Port KC financing component to all of this, so that is going to be, some of the financing. But in terms of how the city of Kansas City gets to $600 million for, their quote unquote match portion of what the state give would be, I have no clue what the mayor's math is to get to that $600 million number.
But they can, just to be clear, the state law allows them to get there. They don't need the public vote. You're just saying, from the standpoint of being a good steward of the taxpayer money, you would prefer a public vote, but they don't need a public vote to get the state portion of the money, right?
Correct. There is no public vote that's required for them to get the state portion of the money. I just believe, as a good steward of taxpayer dollars, if this is something, this is a significant amount of money, and I think that voters should be able to weigh in on this. That's my point. So I agree with you. They don't have to have a public vote. I think if this is something that they want to move forward with, they should have a public vote and not try to circumvent the public.
Has the state been involved in anything with the Royals here as of late, or have these conversations largely just been with the counties and local municipalities?
Yeah, these have all been local conversations. Once the bill passed during the special session a few months ago, really the state's engagement has been fairly minimal. I'm sure the governor's office has been, kept in the loop by, both the team and by the municipalities and the counties that are working on this. But from a state legislative perspective, we really have been pretty hands off.
And last thing, too, as we have you here, Tony Luchtemeier, there was a push in the Missouri House the last couple of days to try to basically make a Kansas City proposed ordinance null and void, which would allow the city, and they passed this yesterday, allow the city to deny sales of small liquor bottles in certain parts of Kansas City. Where is that at right now down in Jefferson City? It seemed like it was something that was starting in the House and obviously would have to make its way to the Senate when it was done. Where is that right now?
So that particular piece of legislation, in fact, I wasn't even aware of it until I read that headline in the news yesterday. I saw that the Speaker of the House made a comment on it. If that bill has made its way over to the Senate, I'm unaware of it. As the floor leader in the Senate, we have probably 3,000 bills that got filed this year between the House and the Senate. Only a very small portion of those, less than 100, will ultimately make it to the governor's desk. And so, I really only start paying attention to a bill once it gets on the Senate calendar, which means it's eligible for debate, which is where I step in, and then I decide kind of which bills go on the floor and how much time they're going to get. And so I can tell you this, that bill is not on the calendar and therefore not on my radar at the moment.
All right. Tony Luchtemeier on KCMO announcing yesterday he's running for Platte County prosecutor. Enjoy the campaign trail, Tony. At least, it's a smaller footprint, of course. And now that you are a first-time father, you're going to need all the time you can get out there. So enjoy the campaign trail and enjoy balancing all of that because I know it's going to be a lot the next few months.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate it.
All right, you bet. Tony Luke DeMeyer, a good guy running for Platte County Prosecutor on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Coming up next, the Artemis II is coming back down to Earth. It will land in the Pacific Ocean tonight at 7:07 Central Time. One of our local representatives talked to the members of Artemis II last night. How did that go down? We have the audio for you coming up next. All right, we just got a bunch of rain last night across Kansas City, right? And there's more coming this weekend. So if you're maybe noticing, I hope you're not, but if you got water in the basement, that's the reality of being a homeowner. Maybe some cracks in the walls, anything feels off right now with all the rain we're getting and going to be having this weekend. Protect your home equity and get KC Pier out right now for a structural consultation. KC Pier is locally owned and locally operated right here in Kansas City. Every job is done by their own trained employees. No subcontractors. That means consistency, quality, and accountability. And when you call KC Pier here in Kansas City, you get a real person answering the phone right here in town. Not a call center, not a robot, a human who knows our city, knows our soil, and the concerns of homeowners in Kansas City. KC Pier gives you a lifetime transferable warranty, plus 1 and 2 year monitoring visits to make sure your foundation is performing the way that it should. And they take an educational approach, walking you through their simple ABC solution options so you understand what your home needs, why it needs it, and what makes the most sense for you. KC Pier, Kansas City owned and home of the lifetime warranty. They are Kansas City's foundation repair experts. Go to kcpier.com. That's kcpier.com.
From Gladstone to Gardner, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Artemis 2 Splashdown tonight, 7:07 Central Time. It's going to be happening, and I'm sure that Mark Levin will have something to say about it tonight during his final hour of the program. It's Splashdown, Mr. Producer! There it goes. That'll be Mark Levin at 7:07 tonight. So you'll hear it, I'm sure, here on KCMO. But last night, you had the Artemis 2 crew talking to a bunch of members of Congress, including Jerry Moran, Kansas U.S. Senator. And take a listen to Jerry Moran, who, to his credit, ties it all back to Kansas when he says this to crew member Jeremy Hansen. Take a listen.
Our next question comes from Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas.
Good evening to all of you. On Monday, Administrator Isaacman and I visited the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas. Commander, it's the place you told me was the best space museum in the world. I've repeated that many times. I'd like to extend an invitation to each of you to come visit us in Hutchinson and be my guest. But I also want you to tell me how you can see the Artemis 2 mission, as well as the Cosmosphere, inspiring the next generation for the well-being of the world.
Well, sir, I'll definitely take you up on that invitation because I have yet to see that museum, and I've just heard amazing things about it. So I look forward to that opportunity, and I hope that maybe something from this mission will end up in that museum at some point in the future. As far as inspiration goes, I really think it comes down to just getting stuff done. And you can have an inspiration program, you can invest a lot of money in that, or you can have a program that just goes out and gets things done, like the Artemis program is doing. And then you can spend your inspiration program dollars on just disseminating that to the masses. And that is what I see happening here right now. I think we're knocking it out of the park.
You guys been out to the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson?
I have not.
You haven't?
No, not me.
Wow. I figured that'd be a field trip or something. I know it's 3 hours away, but I figured that might make the cut for a field trip. I guess not.
There's something on the other side of Topeka?
I mean, it's pretty impressive. I was reading through it after I saw Jerry Moran's video last night, and it's right there in Hutchinson, been there since 1962, and the Cosmosphere is the only Smithsonian affiliate museum in Kansas. It houses the largest collection of Russian space artifacts outside of Moscow and a collection of U.S. space artifacts second only to the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. 5 venues in it: Hall of Space Museum, Justice Planetarium, Cary Digital Dome Theater, Dr. Goddard's Lab, and Cosmo Kids. That's pretty cool. I mean, I got to imagine it's doing all right being out there in Hutchinson, but it's not around the corner, but it may be worth getting to at some point. The only Smithsonian affiliate museum in the entire state. So Jerry Moran has the Artemis 2 guys committing to coming to the Cosmosphere here in Kansas. So that's pretty cool. Jerry Moran getting some love, and we'll give him that much. Now, yesterday, I was filling in for the Vince Show, 11 to 2 here on KCMO. I'll be back there today. And I did a segment on how I just don't care about the Artemis 2. Not that it's not cool that, these guys went further out into space than anybody's ever been. It's just not something that I've really cared about. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong if you care a lot about it. I'm just sharing that I have not cared about it. And producer Jim for the Vince Show, we were talking off the air, and he is like super into it. Now, remember, this is my first time doing this show, so I don't know producer Jim well. He was easy to work with, seems like a good guy. But off the air during a commercial break, he's like, I'm really into it. And he grew up, he's about John's age. He grew up during the space race and things like that. He does not remember the first moon landing, but he remembers the subsequent moon landings. And he's just fascinated by the whole thing. And he's like, it brings me back to being a kid. It's nostalgia. He's like, I start to think about how I'm just this little person on this big planet in this major ecosystem of the universe. And it just kind of makes me think. And I'm like, Jim, I'm just trying to get through the day, brother. All right. That's the only, I'm just trying to get through my day. I got 7 hours of radio here. I'm not thinking beyond lunch and dinner.
It's interesting you mentioned, have we been out to the museum? And when I thought of the space program when we were kids, it was always about pushing forward the next thing. You know, we had Mercury, and that was one-man flights, and Gemini was two-man flights, and Apollo was three. Then we did the Space Lab and Challenger, the shuttles, right? And so things move on. So it seems like visiting the past of the space program in particular is kind of antique. We're moving forward. But now that so much time has passed, we paused going to the moon and we're reestablishing now maybe is as good a time as any to visit how we got to where we're at now.
That's where I think that
it was easy to remember when I was a kid because I just recited it to you, but then we've had a gap.
Yeah. Well, it's like, when I was working in downtown Manhattan, I walked right by the 9/11 museum every single day. I walked right through the memorial, 3,000 names right there on the fountains. I never went to the museum. Now, I didn't have kids when I was living there, so that's obviously a game changer when you have little kids. You want to teach them history. But even as an adult, I would walk right by it every single day in Lower Manhattan, right past where the Twin Towers were. And I never went to the museum. And in hindsight, I regret not going. So we've got this Cosmosphere right here in Hutchinson. I know it's a 3-hour hike, but you know what? That's a good summer trip for the kids.
Well, the staycation thing, it's not that far away, right?
Exactly. Go make a little weekend out of it down in Wichita. Do something, because I think that's pretty cool. And Jerry Moran getting the Artemis 2 guys to come as well. Hey, that could be part of a big rollout and a lot of marketing and media attention for the Cosmosphere. So I like what Jerry Moran was trying to do yesterday, and I'm in. I'm not sure I'm getting the kids there this summer, but we'll get there at some point. Maybe your kids are older. Make a trip out of it. Coming up next, Nathan Willett, Kansas City councilman, is going to join me on KCMO. What's his reaction to the mayor rolling out a plan yesterday to kick in $600 million for a new Royal Stadium? That's next.
The fun's not done after Monday in the morning. Hey, it's Kevin Kietzman. Join me for Uncanceled at 10 o'clock right here on KCMO Talk Radio.
The big news yesterday from the mayor's office. There will be an ordinance introduced from Quinton Lucas to go ahead with a $600 million redirect of funds to help the Royals build a $1.9 billion stadium at Washington Square Park right next to Union Station and Crown Center. Nathan Willett is a Kansas City, Missouri councilman, 1st District. He's also running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District up in the Northland. He joins us on KCMO. All right, Nathan, we appreciate you being here. First off, was yesterday the first time you heard about this proposed ordinance from the mayor, or is this something that's been talked about behind the scenes for quite some time?
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning, Pete. Happy Friday. This is something that I've heard some things about, and I don't know how much of this is actually the mayor's ordinance and deal as much of it is the city manager, and then the mayor introduces it and acts like it's what he put together. So I just want to clarify that right off the bat. But I have not seen the official proposal until right during council. I heard that was going to be introduced, and 9 of my colleagues co-sponsored it, and it takes 9 votes to get something through in a pretty good, you could do it same day, but they are sending it to committee next week to have some kind of public input. But my main thing here is, as someone who represents the Northland and someone who is fiscally conservative, and I do care about the Royals as well, we got to make sure that this plan works for the city, and there should be questions asked. When you don't ask questions, that's when a lot of things may be the devil's in the details, as they say, and I want to make sure that the details are good. And I do believe that the people ultimately should be able to decide on a decision like this.
Nathan Willett's joining us on KCMO. I hate to do it on the air, Nathan. I'm going to ask you to slide 5 feet to your left or right. There's a little bit of a cell phone breakup there, but I want to follow up with you on that and say, okay, we're 2 days removed. Yesterday, we were 2 days removed from the city voters going ahead with the sales or the earnings tax for another 5 years. And the city comes out and says, hey, if we don't pass the earnings tax, we're broke. There's no cops. There's no fire. There's no nothing. But now we're talking about a $600 million redirect for a baseball stadium. So what exactly is the fiscal situation of Kansas City, Missouri, as you understand it, as a member of city council?
Yeah, well, I think that we did okay on this last budget. I did vote against it because it had a lot of junk in there, but we could have gone away with at least 20% of the budget and still been fine in the city. But I'm asking the questions of how does this $600 million redirect affect the police budget? How does it affect the firefighters budget? You're going to talk about a complex going in downtown Kansas City. We got to make sure it's safe for people to go there. And, number one, a lot of my constituents would love to see the K be where they remain for a period of time. Obviously, that's not a decision. But if this is going to happen, there has to be people who are standing up and asking legit questions and not just being rubber stamped on it.
So where is this council at when it comes to, potentially being divided on this issue? Or do you think the mayor knows he's got the votes to move ahead with this, and that's why the announcement came down yesterday?
Yeah, I think that you'll see more in their presentation next week. I think that this exciting proposition, obviously we want to keep sports teams in our state, but the question is, to what extent? I will say this. The difference between this time around and last time around is you have the Show Me Sports Act, which the state of Missouri is going to send hundreds of $millions to Kansas City. And so it has more of an incentive for people to vote for something if they were to put it on the ballot. And so I'm confident that if you are transparent with the voters and you put something together and give them the opportunity to weigh in on it, I think something like this would pass. I don't think decisions at this magnitude, like let's talk about the airport. The first time around when they did the airport, that thing failed. They went back to the drawing board. They communicated with constituents, seeing what they want. Obviously, we don't like the bathrooms in the new airport. I don't think people would have voted for it if that was the case on the ballot. They knew that ahead of time. But, that they did go back to the ballot on the airport, and then the voters voted for it. I think this is something that they should be doing. I don't think the Royals, should be scared of a vote. I think if you make a good argument and talk about it, I think that it could pass. But I'm someone who's not going to be a rubber stamp on this. I just want to make sure that we are actually doing the role of local government, which is public safety and infrastructure, and then supporting our neighborhoods.
Do we know, the mayor referenced like there being an entertainment district, kind of a TIF district or whatever, that obviously would redirect monies to pay off a portion of the stadium. Do we know the size, the scope, the boundaries of this district, or is that all TBD as far as you know?
I'm sure that's TBD. I think that they're confident that they can generate the amount of money in that area. But the other thing I want to tell you, too, Pete, that's not talked about that I'm going to introduce at council this next week is there's the Korean War Memorial there at Washington Square Park. And I want to make sure that if we are going to put a baseball stadium in there, we find just as good, if not a better spot to recognize veterans of the Korean War. And I'm going to make sure that we find a spot in the city, if that were to happen, that is, number one, public and accessible to our veterans. And then number two, a beautiful area that we can have just as nice of a tribute. So I'm even looking at some places up in the Northland. So as you know, as one member of this council, I can't get to decide everything, but what I can do is push back on a few items to make sure that we are actually doing our role and trying to be a guardrail, even when they try to go off the rails.
All right. So what's next? I mean, has the mayor said when this is going to go to a vote of the city council, and what details do you have, if any, on that front?
Yeah, it could be voted on next week, as early as next week. I do think that there might be a parks decision as well, which I think is a less of a controversial item, as long as we figure out what we're going to do with the Korean War Memorial. But the bottom line, Pete, like you said, you had that earnings tax vote, and then you have an announcement like this. It was 5 years ago when we did the earnings tax vote, and the mayor did the defund the police, a $42 million reallocation. So you never know what comes out of City Hall a week or two after the earnings tax vote. And so that's why you didn't really see me go rah-rah on that as well. Obviously, you want to protect pensions of our first responders, but, at the same time, you can't just be acting like police and fire, and then a proposal like this could potentially hurt our police officers and firefighters. And so I want to make sure that this proposal does not do that.
Nathan Willett, Kansas City Councilman on KCMO. He's also running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District up in the Northland. Nathan, thank you as always for the time. We appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too, Pete. Thanks.
You bet. Nathan Willett on KCMO Talk Radio. It's interesting he brought up the airport. I want to touch on that because, as he noted, goes to a vote, goes down, goes back to a vote. They kind of get their ducks in a row. They figure it out. Remember how the airport was funded, though? It was not funded by a new tax. It was not funded by redirecting other taxes. It was financed through nearly $1 billion in special obligation bonds, which were paid back through the airlines. The airlines were the ones who were paying back and are still obviously paying back the bonds on that. Airline fees, concession revenue, parking fees, right? Not city taxes. The airlines took on the burden, and they do that all around the country. So if they want to build the new airport in Dallas or Atlanta, the airlines do that themselves. Now, you're paying for it. If you're going on a Delta flight from Kansas City to whatever, L.A., and they're part of a new airport in Atlanta, well, they got to pay that back. So there's a portion of your flight from Kansas City to L.A. that even though you're not going to Atlanta, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's all one pot of money that the airlines have to use to make their payments to their employees, make their bond payments in other cities. Like, it's all one pot of money. But the airlines are shouldering that. That's the difference. So I've always been a pro-airport guy. I was when I got here. When I got here almost 10 years ago, obviously, the airport was the old airport, and I was like, this is a dump. It's a terrible, or it was a terrible entrance to a great city. I know we've got problems, but still, it's our home, and we all love it, and it's Kansas City, and that was a terrible front door to the city. What we have now was well worth it. And it wasn't about, redirecting city money in Kansas City. It was up to the airlines to figure out how they were going to pay off the bonds through fees and concession revenues and parking fees up there and things like that. That's not what these stadium projects are. They're very different in terms of how they're set up. So I'm glad Nathan brought up that comparison because there are some similarities in terms of how he portrayed it, but there's a lot of differences as well. A lot of differences. 913-408-7957. John Patterson, the Speaker of the House of Missouri, is going to join us at 8:20 on KCMO. I want to get the state perspective on this because it was kind of ho-hum yesterday from the state. Kehoe put out a statement, the governor, he put out a statement that was kind of like, all right, cool, like good luck. It wasn't rah-rah. It was like, all right, we'll see what happens. So that tells me that there's still a lot of things that have to happen to get this deal done. Kansas City media was acting like, all right, Royals are going down. It's all good. Everything's squared away. Rah, rah, woo. Put on your sports ball cap and away we go. It's like there's things that still need to happen here. Now, do I think it's probably more done than not? Yeah, I'd say 60-40, 70-30. But there still are hurdles. That's why you didn't really see the governor yesterday, and the Royals were nowhere to be found beyond just a statement. That's all you had from them. All right, coming up next, try explaining politics to a 7-year-old. We'll do it coming up. Yeah.
Vince Colonnese here. Join me for your lunch hour from 11 to 2 on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
7:50, the rain is still falling across parts of Kansas City. It'll move out in the next couple hours. We'll be dry the rest of the day, maybe a stray shower in the afternoon. But yesterday, we're driving back from soccer practice. And as the practice was wrapping up, my phone goes off, and I look, and it's someone high up in Missouri politics, and I can't take it. All right, I am not interrupting dribbling drills to take this call from someone high up in Missouri politics. I'm not doing it. All right, they're going to have to wait. The girls come first. But on the way home, I call this person back, and we have a conversation. It's about 3-4 minutes. We wrap it up about the Royal Stadium and the perspective from the state. And then in the back seat, Claire's like, who is that? And I said, well, it's a politician for the state of Missouri. And she says, well, what's a politician? I said, well, you have people who are local politicians for our cities. You have people in our counties who are politicians. You have state politicians, and you have federal politicians. And what they do is they create the laws that we have to live by, what we can and can't do. And she said, okay. I said, like Donald Trump is a politician. He's the president. That's a politician. He's the guy who obviously is running the country, but that's a politician. Oh, okay, I get it. So she goes, does that guy like Donald Trump? I said, yeah, well, he does. The person I was talking to. And she says, well, yeah, I guess they all have to like him, right? Because he's the president. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. They do not all need to like him. Nope, that's not the game. She's like, well, why not? I said, well, politicians have different ideas in terms of what they think is best for the people. Some of them like certain things and believe that certain ways are best ways to help the people. And other politicians believe that there are better ways to help the people. And she's like, okay, well, give me an example. So this is a very hard conversation to have. You're trying to explain this for the first time to a 7-year-old, and it's much more difficult than anything I did yesterday during 7 hours of radio between this show and the Vince Show, where you're talking, obviously, to an adult audience about the issues of the day. That 5-minute conversation was much more difficult than anything I talked about during 7 hours of radio yesterday. And I said, well, okay, here's a great example. I said, mom and dad, obviously, we have an income, and we've got to pay our government money. Every paycheck that dad gets, a portion of that goes to pay for our cops and our firefighters and schools and our army, and that's how it goes. And she says, well, how much are you paying? I said, well, don't worry about that, but, just to use a round number, every dollar that I make, let's say 20 cents of every dollar, more or less, probably more, I've got to pay to the government. So every dollar that dad makes, 20 cents of that is going to the government. And you got to give the government money to pay for all these different things that we have. Our roads that we're driving on, our bridges, our army, cops, those things, right? She's like, okay, so why don't some people like that? I said, well, it's just to use that as an example. It's just a difference between how people view the government. Some people think the government should be doing more for people, and some people believe the government should be doing less. And she asked the question, well, why? Who wants to do less? I said, well, it's not about doing less for helping people. It's just about this idea of what is the government's role. So now we're kind of getting deep in the weeds on this in terms of helping kids and what makes sense and helping people out. I said, well, the government's not the best when it comes to being efficient with money. They're just not very good with it. They waste money. She goes, what do you mean? Like they throw it out the window? Yep, they might as well just throw it out the window. I said, that's kind of like a nice way to put it. Yeah, they just throw it out the window. That's basically what they do. They toss it out the window, and whoever picks it up, well, they're the lucky winner that day. So, well, that doesn't sound like a very good deal. Like, no, it's not. So she said, how do other people want to help people who need it? I said, well, through charity, through private giving, through churches, because they're much better at it. There's a lot of evidence that shows that private organizations do a much better job. at helping people in an efficient way than the government does. And by the way, I made sure to explain to her that people who believe in smaller government and less government are more charitable as well. The numbers back that up. So that's why mom and dad have organizations that we help and, the church and things like that, because we believe in that style of government. We believe in that kind of lifestyle. So therefore we put our money where our mouth is. And that's an important thing to do. So that 5-minute conversation last night was eye-opening for me, but you're trying to view all this through the prism of a 7-year-old. And when you actually take a step back and think about life through the prism of a 7-year-old, you get a lot of clarity. It kind of brings you back to that base level where you say to yourself, now some of this stuff where we sometimes get in the weeds and we overthink it, it really isn't that complicated. And it doesn't need to be that complicated. But we sometimes, as adults, overcomplicate these things. And they don't need to be overcomplicated, John. They just don't.
The course of this conversation, I was thinking as a father, you might be overcomplicating this a little, but I don't know Claire's comprehension. She may be, taking it all in, like you say, but usually you're going to get another question of why.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of those. But
Yeah.
the follow-up questions made me realize she was comprehending it enough to ask that follow-up.
That's what it seems like, sure.
Because that's where I was struggling, and I was like, boy, I'm kind of getting into this here more than I thought I would. But the follow-up questions were well thought out, so that made me think something was clicking for her.
So she's not going to be a journalist.
Right. Or she is, and we mean more people actually asking real questions.
Yeah, touche.
That's what we need. My goodness. You get better questions in the backseat from the 7-year-old than you do yesterday of Mayor Lucas's plan for the Royals. Instead, all you saw on TV last night was rah, rah, Washington Square Park. It was so bad. I will say this. Chris Ketz was very good on Channel 9. He did a sit-down with Mayor Q. But the low-level reporters, it was a joke what I saw. But Chris Ketz on Channel 9 did a very good job. He had a one-on-one with Mayor Lucas, and he asked some very good, pointed, pertinent questions. And that's why he's Chris Ketz. News is coming up in a couple of minutes on KCMO Talk Radio. Then, what is the latest from the plans for tomorrow, the meeting between the United States and Iran in Pakistan to try to end this war? We'll tell you next. Tomorrow, of course, is game day. J.D. Vance is going to Pakistan, and he is going to be negotiating with the Iranians along with Steve Witkoff, and they are going to try to obviously figure out a way to bring an end to the war. Iran is currently seeking a toll on the Strait of Hormuz traffic. That has also been part of this breaking news so far this morning, as obviously all eyes are on that part of the world and figuring out what exactly is going to happen from here on out, as there's hopefully an off-ramp here for everybody involved. J.D. Vance was just on the tarmac moments ago where he spoke to reporters very briefly, and here's part of what the vice president had to say just a few minutes ago.
Look, we're looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see. As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see. So I hope you guys have a safe flight. We'll certainly take some questions later on. But for now, let's get on the plane and hit the road. Thank you.
All right, that was the Vice President, J.D. Vance. This is by far the most monumental thing that J.D. Vance has done in his political life. There's no doubt about it. The president is not going. The president should not be going. You could send either Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance. It's the right move to send the vice president. He still is the number two, even though Marco's kind of become a star, political star in recent months. It seems like he has surpassed J.D. in terms of how people perceive these two guys as the potential heir to President Trump in the GOP. But it's right to send the vice president there. It's obviously a huge moment for him as well, not just for his political career, but obviously more importantly for the country. And right now you've got Iran trying to toll the Strait of Hormuz. This came from Fox News this morning. Trey Yingst had the report, and President Trump is warning them ahead of negotiations this weekend. Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. This is not the agreement that we have. So it feels like the whole ceasefire is kind of a mess right now. And that's not good for anybody. Oil's kind of just fluctuating. It's just floating right around $90 a barrel as things currently stand. But it's not a good situation. And yesterday when I was filling in for the Vince show, I had Roger Marshall on, our Kansas U.S. Senator, one of our Kansas U.S. Senators. And I asked him about the midterms, and he made it very clear. I mean, listen to what Roger Marshall had to say. He was on with me yesterday, and he made it very clear they all want this thing to be over in Iran.
Yeah, so Pete, so number one is we got to get this Iran war wrapped up. Look, I hate war. I think Americans hate war. I do believe in peace through strength. I do believe President Trump made the right decision to go forward with this. But hopefully we can have a positive outcome out of this long term. We need to get Iran behind us, right? And then we've got to get this economy going in the right direction. And I truly did. I truly do think it was starting to turn around, and then bang, we had this Iran war, and then there's no doubt that the price of gasoline, the price of oil, that always leads us into inflation, and that's what brings us out of it when it starts coming down. So we have hit a hiccup right here. We've got to get the economy going back in a better, stronger direction, and bring these people up back into the fast lane, or at least the medium lane out there, going the speed limit, if you will. We need to bring these folks that are in the slow lane, bring them in up to bringing the speed limit. That's what we got to be focused on. And again, it goes back to the cost of housing and health care, child care. Those are the ones that I hear the most about.
And remember, Roger Marshall is obviously up for re-election this year in the state of Kansas. So he's got a lot at stake here, not just from a personal perspective, but from a political perspective and, for the United States Senate as well. Now, this morning, we got some news. Consumer prices rose 3.3% in March as energy prices spiked due, of course, to the Iran conflict. So the consumer price index was up 0.9% for the month, putting the annual inflation rate at 3.3%, pushed by a 10.9% surge in energy costs. Both numbers came in at the expectations, but this is now the highest inflation number we've seen in nearly 2 years, since May of 2024, when it came in at 3.3% May of 24. So almost 2 years exactly was the last time we saw inflation running this hot. And it's all driven by gas prices. All of it is driven by gas prices. The month-over-month number was 0.9%. That is an increase from 0.3% in February. So this is for the month of March. And obviously, the war started at the beginning of March. So this is all driven by what's happened in the wake of the war. And then you see Roger Marshall here in Kansas saying, we got to end this thing because we've got to get energy prices back down to where they were. But here's the difficult part. While we appear to have set back the Iranians years as they continue to try to develop a nuclear weapon, the bad guys are still in charge. The radicals are still in charge. The hope from early on was like, hey, we're going to get people running the country who are going to be more like-minded to the West, not chanting death to America, and the people of Iran are going to rise up, and this is going to be a great situation. Let's be clear. That has not happened. Whether you like the war or not, that goal has not been achieved. We are not sitting here and talking about a different Iranian regime. Now, maybe they're a little less crazy. Maybe they're a little less radical. I don't know. I have not seen any evidence of that, considering right now, they're trying to charge a toll in the Strait of Hormuz, which the president of the United States is not happy about at all, and nor should he be happy about that. But you're dealing with, in large part, the same group of crazy radicals that you were kind of dealing with a month ago. They just happen to have different names because you blew up a bunch of the old guys. That's what you're looking at right now. And that's why I think the goalposts have moved from the standpoint of what the expectations are. And that's okay. I mean, that's part of war. The goal that you had a month ago doesn't necessarily have to be your goal today. But if we're going to be honest about it and sit here and talk about this from the standpoint of the United States of America, we've seen the costs go up. And if it's about our kids and grandkids being in a safer world where Iran does not possess nuclear capabilities, okay, we set them back. That's fantastic. But if we're not going to get to that end goal without having boots on the ground and having some type of, invasion of Iraq, which I don't think anybody wants right now, there's no appetite for on the left or the right, then this may be the best we can do. In which case we set them back. Okay, fine, good, get out. And figure out how to get that global oil market humming again, because that obviously is what matters here as well. And that's what the president has to be focused on, because you do have a lot of Republicans who are on the ballot this fall who are not thrilled about where things are right now. And they shouldn't be thrilled about it. They shouldn't be. People are paying a lot right now at the pump. You've got the ag industry that Roger Marshall also talked to us about yesterday that's obviously getting crushed by the fertilizer cost, which then will impact Americans at the grocery store, not right now or next month, but that'll have an impact coming up here in the fall. That's when that impact will start to be felt at the grocery store potentially. So that's what also Iran knows. Iran knows that the president has his own party saying to him publicly and privately, we want out. And while Iran does not hold a lot of the cards here, they do hold that one card. And they're going to play that card. And we'll see how it plays out tomorrow in Pakistan. John Patterson is the Speaker of the House in Missouri. I wanted to get a state reaction on the Missouri side of the state line to the Royals deal, or the proposed Royals plan that came from City Hall yesterday. The mayor announced that he wants an ordinance to redirect $600 million in taxpayer monies to a Royals new stadium that would cost $1.9 billion. What does the Missouri Speaker of the House think of that? What is his take? We'll get to it coming up next.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
The announcement came from Mayor Lucas yesterday that there was an ordinance he was planning to move ahead with to redirect $600 million in city funds to a Royals proposed stadium down at Washington Square Park. Now, the state of Missouri passed a bill last year in the fall that would chip in up to 50% of a theoretical new Royals, or at the time, Chiefs Stadium. So we know that the state has agreed to a portion of this deal, but it is contingent on there being a local element as well. There had to be a local element for the state deal to kick in. Is this going to work? John Patterson at Elise Summit is the Speaker of the House. He is joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. John, good morning. Thanks for being on KCMO. What was your initial reaction to this news yesterday?
Well, I thought it was great to hear. I think we shouldn't be jumping to any conclusions just yet. I think it seems like it's the beginning of a negotiating process, and I'm not privy to any of the information about what's happening at the city, but I think it is a good sign that the city is looking to help with this. And like you said, it does need a local component, the state legislation that we passed last year. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think it sounds like it's far from a done deal, and now we have to see what the details are.
What was the reaction from Jefferson City yesterday and the people that you were speaking to down there?
Well, I think in terms of Jefferson City, the members from the Kansas City area, I think, had the same feeling as I did. Of course, we all want to see the Royals stay in town, and we want to make sure that taxpayers are treated fairly in the Kansas City area. So most of the members I talked with from the Kansas City area were happy to hear that. But again, I don't think this is a done deal, and we really have to see what Kansas City has to offer and see if they can get the deal done. But we do have legislation in place that if they did that, they could use the state incentives that we passed last year.
I know you're not privy to, obviously, the City Hall plan, but how much scrutiny do you think the $600 million number should be under? And if you had your druthers, would you want to see a vote of the people on this?
Well, I think it's going to get a lot of scrutiny, and I think just reading the media reports, there are a number of elected officials already voicing their skepticism, and maybe even some that have voiced opposition. So I think it's going to get a lot of scrutiny. I don't necessarily think it has to go to a election and have a separate vote for this. I think people elect their elected representatives to make decisions like this. So I don't think you necessarily need that. But I think it's going to get a lot of scrutiny, and I think it should. People should look at what the city's finances are and what they're using to do these incentive packages, and I think it will get a lot of scrutiny.
Now, when it comes to the Royals, what conversations have there been between Jefferson City and the Royals as of late, if any?
Well, I've talked to them a couple times, but really it's the legislation that we passed last year. That's when most of the conversations happen. So the state is ready to go. And just for your listeners, if they recall, the state would pitch in up to half of the stadium and just let whatever revenue they're generating now in terms of sales taxes to make bond payments on a new stadium, and then the state would get any of the extra revenue that would come about from development and future earnings on what happens at the stadium and around it. And so I think it's a reasonable deal for the state and the citizens. So that program is in place, and so I think most of the conversations right now are between the team and the city and the county because the state's already done its part and is ready to go.
Was the state caught off guard by yesterday's announcement from the mayor's office?
I had heard that there would be an announcement of something like this after the earnings tax vote. So I think it didn't catch anybody off guard, and people were expecting something after the election on Tuesday.
So this was carefully planned from the standpoint of, hey, let's get the e-tax through, jam people for another 1%, tell them we need it for the cops and we need it for the firefighters and we need it for the trash pickup. And then wave the magic wand and say, here's $600 million in redirected revenues for a stadium?
Yeah, I think the conventional wisdom was that to get the election over with and then do this. And I've paid that earnings tax once, and it's not something that I think I would ever want to do. But the voters voted for it, and then now they'll get to see what the plan is for the $600 million in incentives.
John Patterson, Missouri Speaker of the House, is on KCMO 95.7 FM. Okay, so I do want to ask you, too, while I have you, Mr. Speaker, about the little liquor bottle plan that got a lot of blowback here. It passed the city yesterday. There are 5 different parts of Kansas City now in 60 days that will ban small bottle liquor sales in an effort to reduce crime in these parts of Kansas City. You said it's bad policy and that the state might pass legislation to make this thing null and void. Is that going to happen?
Well, I do think it's bad policy. Imagine being a small business owner in one of these targeted 5 areas, and you've done nothing but have a convenience store, and then now the heavy hand of government comes in and says, we think your area now shouldn't do this, and you can't sell products that another store just across the street can. I think there are a lot of constitutional issues with that. I think there are governance issues with that. And so that's why I felt compelled at the state to at least introduce legislation, introduce language that would perhaps preempt some of this at the local level. Of course, state law would supersede any local ordinance and just say you can't do this. I also think it's somewhat nonsensical to think that by banning a certain size of alcohol, it would reduce or deter crime. I just don't understand that. If you put small business owners out of business, then there's an empty building, empty parking lot, which I think would actually increase crime.
Okay, so is the legislature going to pass something to make this basically a law that or an ordinance that can't be enforced?
Well, that's the plan at this point. We have language introduced. Of course, in Jefferson City, you never know what's going to pass until 6 o'clock on the final day. But I'm going to work on getting it passed so that these small business owners are protected and that we don't have these crazy ordinances messing with people's lives and business owners in certain parts of the city. So we're going to try for it. You just never know in Jefferson City.
The mayor alleged that this is all about lobbyists going down to Jeff City after they failed in Kansas City. What is your response to that?
Well, the only lobbyists I've heard from are business owners in the areas, and I've heard from actually a number of them, and I think they just feel targeted, that this is arbitrary, and I can't understand how the government would come in and just pick certain neighborhoods and tell store owners you can't sell certain products while someone else just across the street can. I think there's a potential for abuse with that, and so that's who I've mainly heard from our small business owners.
All right, John Patterson, Speaker of the House of Missouri on KCMO. Appreciate the time as always, John. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, there you go. John Patterson, Speaker of the House in Missouri on KCMO 95.7 FM. 913-408-7957. You sold? You in on this? 913-408-7957. Nick Haynes in studio at 9.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Can we throw out somebody else's food at work? Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Seriously, Mark just walked into the studio with the old blue COVID mask, and I almost fired him on the spot. I'm like, what's that thing on your face? Take the diaper off, okay? But he goes, I walked into the kitchen here, and I had to go into the refrigerator, and it smelled, so I put on this mask as a joke. And Mark's right. Because I put my lunch in there. If I got, a snack or something, I throw it in the fridge. And we've got 2 refrigerators here. And the one that I use, I can't speak to the other one. I should probably test the other one. It just stinks to all heaven.
The first one or the second one closest?
I use the further one.
Further one, okay.
The one on the
kind
right.
of reeking, yeah.
Yeah, it is smelling like,
When your salad turns to kimchi, I'll take care of it for you.
But here's the thing. What's it say about somebody when you've got your own food in the refrigerator, you obviously haven't touched it in weeks, if not months, and it's stinking up the joint?
I forgot.
There's not that many. Who?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
I want to find out who it is.
I can confirm both fridges smell terrible.
Oh, God.
So don't try to use the left one. It might be worse.
Okay.
Well, I know from our gatherings, we shove leftovers in there. I don't know if some of those have gotten.
I don't think so, because I was looking for old food.
The real weird flat drawers, and I don't know if there's something in the back of those. I'm going to have to check it out.
I mean, man, I've got a 2-year-old that I still change diapers on. Okay, I know bad smells, especially because everyone talks about like the babies having bad diapers. No, it's when they're almost potty trained, but they're still in diapers, but, they're really going to the bathroom more than they were when they were little. That is the worst because now they're kind of like of that age where they're eating a lot of real food, but they're still in diapers. That's a bad smell. But I come to work and I'm like, boy, it smells better at my house.
You watch those guys on NASCAR in the pit stop. And you learn your diaper change techniques as they get older, and you can do it pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, it's weird to think, but I feel like I'm in the last couple of months of changing diapers for the last time in my life, which is a strange feeling. Yeah, I probably won't, John. You're right about that. I won't.
haven't done any in grandparenting, but I may get some.
Yeah. I think my dad's done 1 out of the 3 girls, like literally 1.
Yeah.
And it must have been, I don't know. No one must have been around.
Way to go, Dad.
We've actually gotten to the point where we're doing pull-ups for our littlest one now. So she hasn't actually number 2'd in her diaper in almost 2 months, which is pretty crazy.
Whoa! All right. Round of applause. Woo! No more pooping in the pull-up. All right. Big stuff happening here with the KCMO team.
So that fridge really knocked me back to a couple months ago.
Yeah, both of you guys have got recent experience in it still.
Oh, my gosh. Well, someone who might need an adult pull-up is George Conway. This guy, he's just, I really feel bad for George Conway.
Worse than Carville?
Yeah, I think that Conway is worse than Carville. I really do. George Conway, I guess his ex-wife now is Kellyanne Conway, who, of course, helped Donald Trump win election back in 2016.
Yeah.
And, they were both big-time Republican people in the party. But Conway got a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. And it's getting worse, and it's getting worse. And it's getting to the point where it's comical, but it's also really sad. So Conway goes viral on this podcast yesterday because he announced how he gave the Joe Biden 2024 Victory Fund almost $1 million, and he took it out of his kid's inheritance. And he's crying about it on this podcast. And take a listen.
I was asked by a friend of mine who raises money for Democrats to speak at a big Democratic fundraiser for what was then the Biden Victory Fund. And I remember I was actually driving out to my friend John Gardner's house out in Maryland, and I was thinking about, well, how much money should I give to the Biden campaign for this thing where I'm going to be the headline spokesperson and asking other people to give, and I thought I'd give a lot of money, but a reasonable amount of money. And then I started thinking about it, and it's like, this is it's money that my kids would otherwise inherit. And I started thinking about that. So what am I going to give? And then I just thought about it. Well, what do I want my kids to inherit? And I literally was in tears. I pulled over to the side of the road, and I was in tears thinking about this. And it's like, I want my kids. It makes me misty-eyed even today. I want my kids to inherit a democracy. More important than money, and that decided that. I'm gonna give the legal maximum, which was like $929,600, and it's just more important. It's just more important, and that's why I did that, and that's why I'm 62 years old. To be out in Park City skiing or something like that, and I should be really, really retired. But I could never live myself if I didn't do everything I could to help get rid of this. You know what?
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure that's one reason you decided to run for Congress.
it's the reason, actually, the reason.
Thanks for making me cry too, George, by the way.
No, there's something in my eyes. Just something in my eyes.
Mine too.
Oh my gosh. I wish that was parody. That's not AI. It's not.
George's kids had to be very upset today.
So George Conway's misty-eyed on a podcast yesterday because he admits to giving the 2024 Biden Victory Fund $929,000 because, in his words, what's the point in giving my kids money if they can't inherit a democracy?
And Biden loses, so that's just money like down the toilet, right?
He literally, yes, of course it is.
Right.
I mean, he just threw $1 million down the drain.
Open a Mr. Good Sense franchise, dude. That would have lasted longer.
And I love how he's not even upset about the $1 million. He's more upset about not handing off a democracy to his kids. George, there's going to be an election in 2028, okay? There's going to be an election in 2.5 years. I promise you. I'll bet you $929,000, George, right now. All right? I'll bet you $929,000 that you can vote for whoever you want in 2028. There will be a midterm this year, George. There will be a presidential election in 28. How broken does your brain have to be to literally come to the conclusion? It's one thing to say, listen, I've got the cash. I've been blessed in this life. I just really like Joe Biden, and I want to give his campaign $1 million. Like, I wouldn't agree with it, but I'd respect that. Instead, he said he literally gave Joe Biden, who, God bless him, by the end of his time in office, was a walking dementia patient, $1 million to try to win re-election because he wanted his kids to inherit a democracy. Wow. I mean, some people truly have lost it. They have absolutely lost it. Poof. But you know what? At least his kids will inherit his soiled underwear in a brown paper bag.
Oh, and the hosts that were tearing up.
Yeah, I know. Good
Lord.
They could package his tears and try to sell it on eBay for 7 cents. Man, that is just
unbelievable. You should have went skiing, George.
Yeah.
Because your kids will inherit that democracy anyway.
Exactly. He should be in Park City. Go touch some, snow, not grass out there. Although I heard it's been a bad ski season out west, or it was a bad ski season out west. Man, that is, oh gosh. It makes me laugh, but it also makes me sad for the man because the guy is totally broken. And, he's thrown away his marriage and he's just given it all up to fight this made-up caricature of who Donald Trump is. Like, don't like him, sure. I mean, there was plenty about Joe Biden where I was rolling my eyes or disagreeing or talking about it here on the air. But at no point was I sitting there saying to myself, boy, I don't know if we're going to have an election coming up in 24. This guy, he's something else. It never felt that way to me. But that's how this guy breaks these people. And it's really just sad and pathetic because it doesn't need to be this way.
No.
It shouldn't be this way. But it's a world that they've created in their own minds is what it is.
Exactly. They deserve all the torture that their minds create for themselves, I say. Carville particularly. What in the hell happened to him?
What
Did
happened?
he fall? Somebody hit him in the head with a gallon paint cans?
I mean, think about this, too, with a guy like Carville. The guy's living off what he did 35 years ago at this point. I mean, only athletes get to live in the past like George Carville does. The guy he literally is living off of something he did 35 years ago, which was it really that hard to do to get a Democrat elected president after 3 terms of a Republican in 1992?
Mm-hmm.
Was that really all that difficult?
Don't you love running into those kind of people whose fortune and luck
Yeah.
they think they created? It's like, dude, you don't even get what happened all around you.
Oh, that's so true. That is so true. Okay. All right. Coming up, we'll get the buy, sell, hold. 3 questions as we roll till 9 o'clock, and then Nick Haynes in studio from 9 to 9:30. Hy-Vee's online orders has been a game changer for our family. You just can't beat it because when it comes to Hy-Vee online orders, you save time. And yes, you also save money in the process with the Perks or Perks Plus membership, where you can end up getting those groceries delivered right to your house for free. Kate texted me yesterday. She said, I'm going to do a pickup at Hy-Vee. Got to get something for dinner. And that's how it goes in our house. And it can be that way in your house as well. Get the Perks Plus membership. They'll deliver for free only at Hy-Vee.
from Smithville to Shawnee Mission. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
8:50. Good morning. Happy Friday. Rainy morning across Kansas City. It's that time of the week. Let's roll it.
It's time to buy, sell,
How about a day 12 and a half, 15?
and hold. Buy, Sell, or Hold is sponsored by KC Pier, the experts in foundation repair. Don't buy, sell, or hold your home without an inspection from kcpier.com.
All right, John, what do you got on Buy, Sell, Hold?
All right, check this one out. Buy, sell, or hold Hunter Biden versus the Trump boys in a cage match. That'd be Eric and Donald Jr.
Oh, man,
The
I'm buying this. I'm buying this. Hunter Biden announcing yesterday he wants a cage match against Trump's sons. Take a listen to this, courtesy of TMZ.
Hey, guys. Hunter Biden here. I just got a call from Andrew Callahan. He asked me to come out on the Channel 5 Carnival Tour at the end of the month. I think we start in Phoenix, and then we go to San Diego, and we end in Albuquerque. And I think he's trying to organize a cage match, me versus Eric and Don Jr. I told him I'd do it, 100% in, if he can pull it off. And if he can't, I'm still coming. And I think he's got a lot of other surprises up his sleeve, a lot of fun. And I hope I can see you guys out there. You can get tickets online right now, and I'll see you out on tour.
All right, this is just
Sounds like Joe. It kills me. Younger Joe, what he used to sound like.
Just like George Conway, this is really sad. Now, I'm buying it because I'd love to see the cage match, and I'd love to see Don Jr. just do the people's elbow on Hunter or something like that from the old WWE days with The Rock. But it's sad that Hunter Biden's crying poor over his legal debts, and now he's announced a U.S.-based tour with a popular YouTuber where he wants to cage fight Eric and Don Jr. As if these two guys who say what you want about the president, his sons are actually like serious business people. They've obviously taken over the family business. There's no indication they've done anything but a solid job running these businesses. And, you know, they're raising kids. They're living their life. Their families are obviously helping run the show. And the idea that they're going to go cage match Hunter Biden, who's got to pay some legal bills, man, that is really sad for Hunter Biden.
For him, but maybe onto something. I would pay to see Jasmine Crockett take on Marjorie Taylor Greene. They had a good spat going there a few years back.
She's a real beauty.
Yeah.
That would be good, man.
Some stuff like that. Sharice Davids could probably hold her own out there.
Yeah.
Pair these off. I'd like to see members of Congress that get into it here. Let's mix it up.
I would like to see that. I'd do it right on the House floor, you know?
There you go.
They actually would be doing something then on the House floor versus just, I don't even know what they do half the time. They're not passing bills. We know that much.
All right.
So put them to use and make them mildly entertaining. Hey, people might watch C-SPAN.
Oh, exactly.
I'm in.
I'll subscribe.
Let's go.
All right. Buy, sell, or hold. The Royals are moving to Washington Square Park downtown. It's done.
Well, I do think it's going to happen. I do. Everything about it I find gross. Like 2 days after the earnings tax vote, not even 48 hours after the ink is dry, where it's like, hey, pass the earnings tax. You don't have any cops in this town. Hey, Royals, come on down. $600 million heading your way, boys. Let's go. Let's get a stadium done. Like, it's gross, but I do think it's going to happen. I do. Obviously, the state of Missouri needs a local component to make it happen. That would be Kansas City. They'll figure out how to direct $600 million towards the financing and bonding of a stadium down at Washington Square Park. I think that John Sherman's made it very clear during his time as owner, he wants to be in a downtown urban-ish setting, and being next to Crown Center and Union Station achieves both of those goals. So I do think that's where they're going to end up. That's been the number one spot now for the last few months. And while the financing is suspect at best, it does seem to me like that's where this is all trending. And the mayor will ultimately get his way. Maybe there's some kind of pushback from city council, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I think that this thing ultimately will get done. and the Royals will end up moving to that location, John.
We'll be back to that community agreement crap with the Crossroads, though. That'll be interesting, won't it?
Yeah, listen, and the grift is going to get big on that.
Griftier.
Yeah, the grift is going to get griftier.
Yep.
Okay? You're going to have a lot of people with their hands out looking to get their money on, or looking to get their hands on some of that money to build the stadium, and you're going to have everybody working every angle possible when it comes to, they'll have the whole X amount of percentage of businesses that are minority-owned, women-owned. They'll do all that stuff instead of just saying, who can we hire for the best price that will do the best job and will get this deal done on time. It never goes that way with these projects in major cities. They've always got to hit certain quotas and things like that. And what that does is end up costing the project more money, and it delays the project. But it's like clockwork on these things. What's next, John?
Buy, sell, or hold Mark's Masters Parlay.
All right, we're sitting here on Friday of Masters weekend. Has anything changed on that leaderboard? Let me take a look.
Wyndham Clark has jumped to a -3, so he's had 3 birdies today, so he's in second place right now.
Oh, Wyndham Clark. Okay, I haven't heard that name in a little bit. All right, we still have Sam Burns at the top of the leaderboard and Rory McIlroy. They're both 5 under. They are teeing off later this morning. What do you got for me, Mark?
Well, hello, friends. Today, for FanDuel, we're going to be doing a simple bet for you today.
A simple bet?
Simple bet. This is very easy. $10 to win $25. All you got to do is use your 25% boost on FanDuel and pick either Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy to win the Masters. 10 to win 25. It's very simple today.
You know what? That's a good little bet. So one of those two guys has to win the Masters. Right now, Rory's tied for first place. Scotty Scheffler is 3 back at 2 under. He tees off here in about 25 minutes. And you're telling me that just one of those guys has to win the Masters and it's $10 to win 25 on FanDuel?
That's right.
That's a good deal, man. That's a really good deal. I'm going to buy it, Mark.
All right.
I'm going to buy it. Listen, the reality is this. Since 2005, only 2 players have come from outside the top 10 after the first round to win the Masters. So your 2026 champ is almost certainly going to be one of those guys in the top 10 that includes Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. But you also got Gary Woodland in there, KU's own. I may have to pull for Gary, but you know what?
You could do Gary as a solo bet on the side.
I could hedge it with Gary Woodland. I like that, Mark. Good job. Go check it out on FanDuel. Buy, sell, hold in the books. Coming up next here on KCMO Talk Radio, our in-studio Feature Friday guests. We'll talk with Nick Haynes, the stadium project, the big breaking news, and much more with him next. Well, every Friday we like to bring a guest into the studio, and who better to have on than our good friend Nick Haynes of Kansas City PBS joining us on KCMO. Week in Review airing tonight at 7:30, and when I asked Nick on, it was before all the crazy drama came down with the Royals. Good morning, Nick.
Well, good morning, Pete, but I'm just patting myself on the back this morning because just before we did the program, I saw, Channel 41 reporting that there's a $1.9 billion deal for a new stadium at Washington Square Park, $600 million from the city. Then Chris Ketz was on the show. Yeah, I just interviewed the mayor. It's going to air tonight. We're doing a whole thing on this. And what I was amazed at, as it all unraveled, we got every fact and detail right.
That's amazing.
But it is, we are in this very challenging position, of course, in the jobs that we both do, of trying to keep track of this very frenetic, fast-paced news cycle. And, it takes a lot. It's mentally fatiguing to keep up with it all.
It can be. But I will say this, obviously you've got a bigger challenge where you guys are recording your show on Thursday for people that don't know, and then it's airing Friday night. So you could have had to call everybody back today had you not gotten the news exactly when you did yesterday.
Yeah. Now, the good news about that would be I think I would get the guests again because they would be in our crew we'd have a mutiny on our hands. When you hear about people taking up pitchforks and things, they would not have liked that.
Oh, my goodness. Well, listen, it's obviously the latest iteration of what has been just a crazy news cycle with these stadiums. What's your sense on what the reaction has been in the wake of yesterday's news?
Well, first of all, there are people, of course, because who will say, Santa Claus has come to town. You're going to have those people because they've been asking for downtown baseball, for decades. And the idea that you can do this plan and not basically have to demolish businesses and homes to do it, which was the case in the Crossroads district when we had this failed sales tax vote 2 years ago. This makes it a much more palatable plan. However, boy, how many details are still totally unknown. It seems, and the Royals, have they really committed? I'm just looking at the line from their news release. We look forward to more detailed conversations as we continue solutions that are best for our team. Could they be any more less committal?
This was not Clark Hunt, Mark Donovan, Laura Kelly in Kansas in December. This was not that at all.
Yeah, this was, hey, we're still interested in other places, folks. If you can put a deal together, $600 million plus $1, perhaps, just in the tax incentives, we might come to you. Yeah, that very much so. And even on the governor's side, he says we're not at the finish line yet. They're going to be relying on a whole bunch of funding from the state of Missouri. And there are lawmakers, and there's only about a month left of the session in Missouri. There are lawmakers there who could still, make this a very difficult time for Kansas City trying to land this deal, even though they have this sort of 50% bill that came up that they'd pay 50% of the public funding that would come from state dollars. I'm not sure, whether that would have more pushback today. And looking at what happens now with even members of the city council, it's hard to believe how many issues today do you get liberals and conservatives coming together on the same thing? This seems to be one of them. And it certainly happened when we had the stadium tax 2 years ago, when you had people like the Casey Tenants Group coming together with the Show Me Institute and conservative tax fighters opposing that plan. And similarly on the city council, you've got Nathan Willett, the more conservative member of that city council, with a Jonathan Duncan, one of the most progressive members, both coming together to say, we're now going to join with groups to file a petition drive to try and stop this, to make sure there is a public vote first. That's an extraordinary ideological battle there, and that they're coming together on this one.
Well, it is very interesting. And what seems to be a common theme is more, hey, can we at least get a vote on this and let the people have a say? That seems to be the consensus here from some people on city council on the left or the right. But it seems to me the best thing that Kansas City has going for it is that the Royals don't need a vote, which they would have needed in Clay County. And it seems like the Royals have no interest in going through that process again. And that may be worth more than how much money you can actually bring to the table.
But again, it doesn't mean there won't be a vote if there was forced to be a petition drive. That does not mean, though, that would be honored. I mean, you just saw that in Independence, Missouri, where there was an effort to block the data center, and a judge rules that this didn't pertain to this kind of a deal. We've seen that before. So we have to be wary of that. And then there's the Jackson County piece of the puzzle. Mania Barker, your your friend, is now the chair of the Jackson County Legislature, and he said, if they want any Jackson County dollars, which they've been paying towards the sports stadiums now, that would require, he would not do that without a public vote. He would not allow any Jackson County dollars to go towards that. Does that make this more complicated? We'll see.
Well, if you're talking about half the stadium potentially funded by the state, $600 million redirected from the city, I mean, you're at 1.5-ish billion of a $2-ish billion project. You're at 75%.
Yes. And all of this, of course, takes place, just basically, so 48 hours after the champagne corks are popped on the big win for the earnings tax. And you saw the mayor say, we won. And then all of a sudden they've got $600 million, even after talking about the panic of, you're not going to get your trash collected. We're not going to shovel your streets. Police are not going to be able to do their jobs. But, some people say, wow, how can they now find $600 million? The mayor says this will not come out of that earnings tax money. Really, this, as you pointed out, is going to be a sort of mix of bonds or what they call the tax increment financing. There would be a district here where sales taxes from that stadium and from the surrounding entertainment district would then pay the city back. So they say it's completely separate.
Well, it's all one pot of money, though, Nick. I mean, that's what's frustrating. Listen, I get the reality of what's probably going to happen here, but I just think it's disingenuous how they make the case. It was the same thing in Kansas that's happening now in Kansas City. So I also don't think Mayor Lucas has much of a leg to stand on when he criticizes the Kansas Star Bond deal, and now he's basically trying to figure out how to do his own version of that for the Royals to keep him in Kansas City. I know this is part of the game, but it's just disingenuous to knock that deal and then suddenly find your own way to do a similar deal.
I think what I'd learned behind the scenes was that Mayor Lucas here was trying to force John Sherman's hand. Because, again, we don't know anything about what the Royals think about this yet.
Yeah.
And so something had to be done. What a legacy project for Mayor Lucas as he winds down the last year of his term. This could be Lucas Stadium, Pete.
Oh no, Nick! Oh no!
We have a Lucas Oil Stadium. I know, somewhere in the United
it's
States.
in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Oh no! You did not just. Oh my gosh! All of Kansas City just cringed on that one. No, they're going to sell it too. That's what they're going to get 15 to 20 mil a year for the stadium rights. That's how this stuff goes. But you know what was interesting to me too? I woke up to this. There was a statement put out from Kansas House leadership saying, we're excited to see the Royals will be remaining in the region with their new proposed location at Washington Square Park. The professional sports teams of the Kansas City region belong to fans and families who support them every season, no matter which side of the state line they call home. So that reads to me as Kansas has really no interest in trying to woo the Royals over their side
I
of the state line.
don't always believe that either.
You don't?
Because really that's what we saw with the Chiefs and, how is this going to, was it going to happen? There seemed to be very little detail. And then Christmas week, all of a sudden, you got everyone going to Topeka to announce this very thought out deal that nobody seemed to know anything about until that week. And it's like, boy. So the legislature just ended its veto session. The Legislative Coordinating Council that controls the state when the legislature isn't there. Could they still do something? They still have the enabling legislation to make that happen. We're in a period of time where you never know what the next shoe is going to drop, Pete. And so I would not in any way rule out the possibility that Kansas still could be in play here.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You're still intrigued by that Kansas side.
Absolutely. Again, because we haven't had a full-throated positive response from John Sherman about this proposal. And it could be shot down in so many other ways, so we'll have to see.
That Clay County site, I think it's a good site, but you think that site's dead because it's got to go to a vote?
I wouldn't say that. I think all bets are off when it comes to the stadiums.
Okay.
There's nothing people will not throw at this to try and land this team. There seems to be still an awful lot of holes in this proposal. Even the, a lot of the financing thing is not quite thought out. That's a difficult site to begin with. It's also the topography of it. How easy is it to actually build a stadium there? So I think, and then the city manager has now been charged with negotiating with the Royals on the financing, all of those kinds of aspects. So there's a lot of things that could still go wrong. So I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk.
What's the other big news item that you've been following or you think is relevant this week in Kansas City?
Well, this was a big election week, and I did find it fascinating. To me, the biggest winner was that a complete political novice in independence who gets the keys to the mayor's office. He was a roofer, former union leader, Kevin King, defeats a very well-connected, well-known, politically connected, former head of the Health Forward Foundation, a respected doctor, and wins the race for independence. And that says something about the data center issue. By the way, I was in Florida this week. We were in Palm County, in Boca Raton, visiting our son. And one of the Uber drivers, it was kind of interesting because he says to me, hey, do you have data centers in Kansas City? And it was sort of, wow, of all the things you could pick, but that's becoming such a huge issue. And the hatred of data centers, which would be the one they're building in Independence, would be twice the size of Arrowhead Stadium, has become real. And you saw this week also that an Independence City, actually an Indianapolis City councilman, there were 13 shots fired into his home. After making a decisive vote on a data center there with a note left saying no data centers. This has become a really volatile issue, and that could have been the issue that propelled someone who got half the votes of his opponent in the primary to win the keys to the City Hall in Independence. I thought was very significant.
I did not think about that one as kind of an underrated story of the week, but that's why we brought you on here, Nick Haynes. Nice job. Well done. All right, we're going to take a quick break with Nick Haynes, our Feature Friday guest. Kansas City PBS Week in Review is airing tonight at 7:30. Do not miss it. Always a great show, one of the best shows happening every single week in Kansas City. I want to ask Nick about that trip to Palm Beach and get a sense of what it was like compared to Kansas City. That's all coming up here on the show. Now, speaking of your house and things going on around your house, you're going to be inside a lot this weekend, right? It's just how it goes. It's going to be raining around Kansas City, and you're going to be looking at something in your kitchen, maybe a bathroom, and saying it's time for the upgrade. Well, that is where CMP Construction can help you today. They're family-owned, Kansas City company for decades, run by Chris and Teresa, and they built the brand CMP Construction on this motto: building trust one room at a time. It's not a big corporate remodeler. There's no middleman. It's a team that treats your home the way they would treat their own. Kitchens, bathrooms, basements, full remodels. CMP Construction does it all. And they focus on quality craftsmanship, clear communication, and doing things the right way. Start to finish, no pressure, no runaround, just honest guidance and realistic expectations. They'll give you a free estimate. So just go to their website, see the amazing work that they're doing, cmpremodel.com. That's cmpremodel.com. Reach out to them, get the free estimate, and get to know a great local Kansas City customer or Kansas City company that is building trust one room at a time. cmpremodel.com and start the conversation today.
Coming up at 10 o'clock, it's Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio, right after Pete Mundo and Mundo in the Morning.
All right, we got a few minutes left with Nick Haynes, our Feature Friday segment in studio here on KCMO. Kansas City PBS Week in Review airing tonight, 7:30. Don't miss it. I think it's the best review show. But here's what's funny, Nick. A lot of the local news stations are trying to copy you and go up against Week in Review now. I mean, 9 has one, 5 launched one. They're all gunning for Week in Review.
Yes. Imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery, Pete.
I agree with you. I mean, I
think what people like about the program, and I'm aware of it, that it is you get a variety of voices.
Mm-hmm.
And so, by and large, some of the other stations are doing it are places to just boost their talent and their stories versus hearing from a more robust view of other journalists in our community.
That's a very good point. They're doing it for self-promotion. You're doing it to get the best content, to talk about Kansas City that you can. That's an excellent point. So you were down for Easter weekend. You were down in Boca Raton, Florida.
We sure were.
You mentioned this right before the break that, you had Uber drivers asking you about Kansas City. They asked about the data center. What else came up in your travels about Kansas City?
This was the most fascinating thing ever. First of all, it was amazing. Now, not a lot of the Uber drivers, but we didn't even bother getting a rental car. It was so expensive there because Florida doesn't have the income tax. They want to sock it to tourists. So for 4 days, it was going to be like $600 for a rental car. Wow. Now, that's not the kind of rental car you would get, your luxury Rolls Royce kind of thing, Pete. This was just your standard thing. It was like $600. So we just Ubered the whole time. So you got a lot of drivers who don't say anything to you, but a number of them were very curious and wanted to know, and you're British and you moved to Kansas City. I said, okay, why would you ever move there? And what interesting was one driver said to me, I want you to pretend now you're the head of the visitor bureau in Kansas City and tell me why on earth I would want to live there. Because, we've got year-round sunshine here. We got these beaches. We have no income tax. And it's an incredibly safe community.
Yeah.
And so it's a sort of, once you strip away the sports teams and your connection with barbecue, and you can say the World War I Museum or the Truman Library or the Eisenhower Museum just in Abilene there, it's a sort of, when you work it out that way, it becomes a little more challenging. But you say, we love living here. One of the things about Kansas City, which has always been great, which you say, is the how affordable it is. But that's also changing.
That's changing, yes.
Absolutely, it's changing. And people are feeling that every day, and that's your listeners to the show. The cost of housing is not what it used to be. Everything is costing so much more. So we're losing a lot of our advantage in the affordability component of living here, too.
We still have I think, much better traffic than many larger metro areas. A more
that's true.
Easy to navigate city and metro area. That would be my big thing. You get a lot of the big city quality with less, not none, but less of the big city nonsense. That would still be a push. And the affordability is problematic, but it still is a lot worse in places like Denver, or Dallas, or South Florida, certainly.
And you could just go to a ballpark, a brand new ballpark downtown, and just park your car easily and get into the stadium.
Please, no, okay. Let's not go there. Okay, now how did you handle, Boca Raton, Florida, my wife is from Long Island, New York, and Boca Raton is known as the retirement destination for many people in suburban New York City. And it has a very heavy Jewish presence as well. Absolutely. I know, your wife is, but it's culturally, it's very different in terms of how people stylistically approach driving, shopping, eating. Everything's different.
Absolutely. How
did you deal with that, Nick Haynes?
I will have to say the vibe, yes, it is nice. You're right near the beach and the weather is very pleasant. But there is a certain hollowness, I thought, to the vibe. And East Coasters have a very, they're much more insular.
Yes.
So you feel a little bit more invisible there in a sense. Nobody says hi to you or nobody talks to you on the street or, you're, I was thinking even we were at a hotel, nobody even says anything to you at breakfast. I can't imagine any hotel we go to, even in Iowa, never mind Kansas City, anywhere around here, in which people just don't want to somehow have any conversation or engagement with you. So in that sense, you feel very invisible. That East Coast abrasive vibe is very present there. This was in Palm County, by the way, which was also we took a little tour there on the water, and they're pointing out Bernie Madoff's old house. And this was his stalking grounds. Never mind where he lived there in Palm County, but that's where he got a lot of his clients from.
How about that? No, there's an enormous amount of money. You said you saw 14-year-olds driving Maseratis. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. There was 14, 15-year-olds. You saw, that we the most souped up, like the $100,000 pickup trucks with everything on them, again, with a very young kid driving that. The other thing that was interesting, you go out to a restaurant, nobody's wearing like sports shirts. Everybody is dressed to kill. Even kids to go anywhere, which was kind of an interesting deal. But it's about being seen, and any display of wealth is to be congratulated there in Boca.
Well, it's become, especially COVID really expedited it. The Wall Street South basically is what that whole region has turned into, and it's got that very New York feel.
Yes.
And I know the west coast of Florida is typically where more Midwesterners seem to retire, the Fort Myers area.
Yes.
But that East Coast, you were right in the hub of really,
Absolutely.
New York City South.
Now, and another tie-in there to you, if you talk with folks there, why they live there, as well as obviously got the beach and the warm temperatures, it is safe. And that's all you heard. It is safe. I've never seen so many gated communities there than in anywhere I've ever been. And they were asking questions about that. How is Kansas City? What's the murder rate in Kansas City? And you said, well, it is on the high side. When they were bucking the trend. When other cities were going down. Exactly. I bet you have prosecutors there who just let people out, and that's why we left New York. So so we got a lot of people who also have left other places because of those types of policies, and they find themselves in places like Florida and increasingly in Texas.
Yes, that's an excellent point. Well, listen, it's a beautiful part of the country. It's, like you said, culturally very different, but they've got their charm as well. There's no doubt about it. And just like you have your charm, Nick Haynes, we appreciate you coming in on a rainy Friday morning and joining us on KCMO.
Happy to be with you. Appreciate you. Thank you, Pete, for the invitation.
All right, Nick Haynes on KCMO. We'll get to our caller of the day next.
Vince Colonnese here, and I'm coming up at 11 after Kevin Kietzman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
$9:34. We've got Kietzman Uncanceled coming up at 10, and then the Vince show is at 11. I'll be there one more day today, 11 to 2. So put out the challenge at about 6 a.m. Got some good callers yesterday from Chicago and D.C., but we didn't get any Kansas City callers yesterday. Don't be intimidated by the national stage. We got great callers who are absolutely amongst the best of any local talk radio station in the country. You're ready for the big time. Some of you are. You're ready. So I'd love to hear from you today when I host the Vince Show coming up at 11 o'clock. All right. Our caller of the day was tied to, of course, the story of the day. And that is an ordinance that Mayor Lucas announced to try to keep the Royals in Kansas City, bring them down to Washington Square Park. It would include $600 million in redirected monies from the city of Kansas City, Missouri. That would be on top of the give or take 50% kicked in from the state of Missouri. And I believe we have our caller of the day we'll get to momentarily. But you got to have some fun with this story. You really do. There still are way more questions than answers. Is the city going to back the $600 million in bonding that they're going to be a part of? Will they be guaranteeing that money? Because if they do, you could have a power and light type situation. You know, every year, Kansas City pays $10 million for the bonds at Power and Light. It's just a check that they stroke. It's one of the reasons that when the 3/8 cent extension was on the ballot 2 years ago now, I know some of you think I'm like just this anti-stadium guy. I'm really not. And 2 years ago, I actually made the case that, first off, continuing with Arrowhead made sense, and the Royals being at that Crossroads site made sense if you care about the city's finances. Because Power and Light loses $10 million a year. If you had put the stadium there at the Crossroads and you tied in 81 baseball nights a year to Power and Light, you would have, as a result, less losses for the Power and Light district. I don't know if they break even or probably make some money, but you'd be saving the city $10 million that now they just sign a check to pay off the Power and Light district. So 2 years ago, if you're a newer listener, you might think that I just hate all this stuff. That's not true. I want to be strategic. I understand it does take some money. I understand the government oftentimes is involved, but it's about how the deals are oftentimes structured that I think are fair to critique. I think that's the obvious thing we should be doing. We do it with other city projects. We do it with any other tax. Why would we not talk about it with this? But with that deal, I actually thought it made some sense to have that stadium there because of how you would tie into Power and Light and hopefully stop wasting money on bond payments for that Power and Light district. Now, with this deal down at Washington Square Park, there will be some entertainment element to it. Talking to some people last night in the know, you know, everyone saw the headline about a $1.9 billion stadium. I've heard whatever the project is could be up to $3.5 billion. What that looks like, we don't know yet. But that's what some people were telling me last night. So is that a redevelopment of Crown Center? Like, what exactly does that look like, and how would that play out? But now you'll have a competing entertainment district 81 nights a year just down the road from the Power and Light district. So what does that mean for Power and Light, where the city's already chipping in $10 million a year to pay it off? It's probably not good, especially with T-Mobile getting crushed now by Morton Amphitheater, which has like 50 shows this summer. And not that all of those would have come to Kansas City and been at T-Mobile, but there's definitely a lot of shows that T-Mobile is losing because of Morton Amphitheater. So it's just bad all in all for Power and Light District. So we'll have to see how that part of it plays out. All right, let's roll our caller of the day.
Hello?
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
913-408-7957. Kansas City, that's where Paul is this morning. Paul, good morning.
Hey, Pete, how you doing? Yeah, I was just wondering if Mayor Q called up the Platte County Sheriff and got the skinny on how to move money around.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, you know what's interesting on that front? Yesterday, with all this drama with the Platte County Sheriff, he was with Tony Luchtenmeyer, who announced he's running for Platte County prosecutor yesterday. Tony's going to come on the show at 7 o'clock this morning. I got to ask him, do you want to be side by side right now with a sheriff who just said, I'm keeping $300,000 that you guys accidentally gave me and not giving it back to the county and the taxpayer? Because I think that's a bad look, Paul.
Oh, I do too. And this moving $600 million around, I'm seeing Power and Light all over again. And Crown Center, you got the Irish Festival on Labor Day weekend. How's that affect that? This thing, I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be asked about this. But this moving money around by these guys is just. It just doesn't look right. Something's wrong with this thing.
Well, that's how it goes, but don't worry.
Yes,
it's economic development voodoo math. It always is.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Pete.
There you go. Paul in Kansas City is our caller of the day. Good job by him, as always.
Kind of wonder if some people are doing their accounting like I see texting where people forget punctuation marks.
Yeah.
Decimal point. We don't need that.
Yeah. Well, I asked Tony if you want to listen to that conversation, it'll be up on the podcast after the show. I said to Tony, listen, you're in Parkville yesterday. You're standing alongside a sheriff who literally will not give $300,000 back to the taxpayer. And I like Tony. I think he'd be a good prosecutor. But he kind of took the approach of, well, I'm focused on the Platte County prosecutor's budget, not really the sheriff's budget. And I'm like, oh, come on, Tony. Really? Come on, man. I mean, any conservative should be like, this is screwed up. And we did a back to blue in Platte County a year and a half ago. Sheriff's a good guy. I mean, I like him, but I don't like this. You can't be, and I don't even think it's like a Republican Democrat thing, liberal conservative. Who's going to back the sheriff just keeping $300,000 because of a clerical error from the auditor's office? I just think that stinks to high heaven. I'll wrap it up before we get to Kietzman to close out the show. Ben Sasse is a former senator from Nebraska. He was once considered a big up-and-comer in the Republican Party until Donald Trump came along. And he kind of got stomped out as an up-and-comer during the Trump wave of 15 and 16. He was viewed as somebody who could have potentially been a presidential candidate. Ben Sasse is dying. And he's dying a really sad death. He's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He's a 54-year-old father of 3, and he's been fighting this disease with an experimental drug that makes his skin bloody and bubbling. And he did a big sit-down interview with the New York Times that was a podcast. It was also a written piece. And it's very long. It's something I've read some of. I haven't read the whole thing yet. But it's a long-form Q&A. And Ben Sasse said a lot of really interesting things. He talked about his faith in this podcast, why he doesn't fear death. It was very introspective of the past, the present, but also looking ahead to the future. And one thing he said here that stood out to me when he was talking about tribalism in politics, how we're going to look back on this time in American and worldwide history, Ben Sasse said the following. He said, the historian in me says 75 or 100 years from now, when you look back on our moment, we're not going to talk about politics at all. What we're going to talk about is the fact that we're living through a technological revolution that was creating economic and cultural upheaval. And we were living through institutional collapse. And way, way, way below that, there's a whole bunch of political institutions that are part of that institutional collapse. He says here what's really happening is these super devices in our pockets, the largest tools any median individuals ever had access to in all of human history, allow our consciousness to leave the time and the place where we actually live. The places where we break bread. The people who live next door to us. The people that you can physically touch and hug. The small platoons of real community. And we allow our consciousness to go really far away. There are things that are awesome about the digital revolution. We're the richest people in any time and place in all of human history. But there are also things that are horrific about this. And we don't yet know how to navigate the economic and cultural and familial disruptions that are coming from this technology. That is perfectly said by Ben Sasse. And as someone who, is growing up or raising kids, I should say, with these phones, I try to be cognizant of it. When you're sitting there and there's work to do and there's an email to check and you're on the couch and the kids are with you and you're hanging out, it's hard to not go to it. You have to make an effort to not go to it. But Ben Sass is spot on to point that out. It is allowing our consciousness to leave the time and place where we actually live, the places where we break bread, the people who are living next door to us, the people who you can physically touch and hug, and we're allowing our consciousness to go really far away. We've all done it. I've done it. I do it more than I care to admit. But being cognizant of that, I think, is also incredibly valuable. Kevin Kietzman, Uncanceled, coming up at 10. He will wrap up the week with us right here on KCMO.
From Lenexa to Lee Summit, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
All right, we're wrapping up the week with Kietzman, Uncanceled, coming up at 10 o'clock. I wish I could have had the mics rolling just now while we were going back and forth off the air on this. Kevin doesn't want the vote on the $600 million.
I don't want the vote. Why would you have one? There's not going to be a vote. This is dumb. This is not even a debate.
I agree with you. There's not going to be a vote.
Okay,
but
why are we talking about a vote?
Why not throw it to a vote? See what the people think.
Why?
It's
Why
their
would
money.
you do that?
It's their money, right?
Okay, so they voted for the people who run the budget in the city and all that.
Yes.
They've made a decision how they want to spend the money. If you don't like that, vote them out. You get a chance every November to vote.
Yes, you do.
Run them out. You don't like Mayor Q, run him out.
But if this is $600 million that now is going to be a hole in the budget, why not say, hey, you know what? Give us a chance to vote on this.
Okay, it's over 30 years, right?
30 years, yes.
Okay, so I don't know what they're going to. Their 1% earning tax is going to bring in $2 million a year. So it's $20 million a year for 30 years. They're going to get 10% of that back from the earnings tax.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these ball players coming in making all this money.
So
they're going to hammer them.
Should we vote on the earnings tax?
They already did.
Yeah, I know.
Passed by 76%.
But should we vote on it going forward, or should we just say,
That's
you know
the
what?
law, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, the law's every 5 years.
Should it be the law?
Sure, if that's the law. If they want to change the law, change the law. But the way we're set up as governments now is we elect officials to run the government. There's a budget every year. They know what they have. If Mayor Q says he has $600 million, what do I care if he spends it? I'd rather have him spend it on the Royals than a pride parade.
But it's
just
not,
me.
It's not
no
an either.
offense to
It's
any
not
people.
but it's not an either or.
Well, sure it is. Something's got to get cut if they're going to spend it on the Royals. Something's got to be missing. Or if you're arguing they're going to raise taxes down the road, okay, don't vote for Democrats.
So in Missouri, they're going to vote on potentially cutting the income tax, right? That's going to be a statewide vote.
Yeah.
Should that be a vote? Like,
Of
what
course.
should we?
That's something new.
Well,
This
is redirection of money.
Missouri's
That's
going to
new.
give 50% to the Royals.
Yes.
There's no vote on that.
Correct.
They're just going to do it.
Should there have been?
No, they're going to redirect the money. They want to keep the baseball team.
Yes.
Okay, so all due respect to companies like Cerner and all these big companies we have in Kansas City, they come and go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have your sports teams come and go. Nobody in this community wants the sports teams to go. They're on a different level than any other business in this community, even creative planning. And you just had him in here a couple of weeks ago. Massive business. If he relocated tomorrow to Scottsdale, it would suck. We'd hate that. But we'd understand it and say, okay, it doesn't really change the city. You start losing the Royals and the Chiefs in this town, we're Omaha. Nobody in this town wants to be Omaha.
Correct.
They'll do anything. And I know how people vote. They'll, the rich billionaire owners, we don't do it. But push comes to shove, no politician's going to get voted out of office over this. This is as bipartisan as it gets. Kansas City, Missouri is filled with Democrats. They say $600 million. Jeff City is run by the Republicans. They say, we'll pay for half the project. We elected them. Vote them out.
If it's that popular, put it on the ballot, let it crush on the ballot, and then Mayor Q can say, this is what the people want. Why not just do it?
The money's already there. They're just redirecting it. It doesn't cost us anything. They're just doing it instead of potholes or trash pickup or whatever it is.
And then when they say, oh, boy, we don't have any money for the potholes, what do they do then?
Let me tell you what this is much better money spent on. This stupid-ass program they got for these businesses with these empty buildings down here. So we're going to fake it that we have businesses so World Cup people come in here and think that Kansas City's thriving more than it is.
I agree with you.
That's a pathetic thing they're doing.
I agree with you. But once again, I don't think it's either or. We can criticize both. Why do we have to pick one or the other?
If we were 4 years down the road on the World Cup and they were already funding the Royals, maybe they don't have money for that project. Maybe that project gets cut. We're not going to spend all this money on the World Cup. Count me in. I'll spend it on the Royals, not the World Cup, every time.
Yeah, but that also, you got a pot of money, right? If we got a pot of money for the city, it can both be bad. They can both be bad uses of money.
I mean,
theoretically.
I describe it this way. This is either the best or worst political move you've ever seen, depending on how you view
if
these
you're
things.
Mayor Q? Or,
yeah, I mean, he was either brilliant. I'm going to give him credit for being brilliant. He's found the money. He waited until after he got his earnings tax passed.
Yes.
He's great at this. Like, seriously. How much better could he do?
Is he?
You're sitting here talking today on the radio about naming the ballpark after him, for crying out loud.
Well, no, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
Nick Haynes said it as, I think, a facetious idea. No one wants to name the ballpark after Q.
Well, there's
going to
be. They could have a Q landing where they serve barbecue and the home runs fly out and the whole thing. They can do all that, and they should.
Is there an all-gender restroom there, too? In the Q part of the ballpark?
Let's hope not. Goodness. I just think there's two different ways to look at it. If you want something new and you can't fund it or afford it, let's have a vote. They tried that. It failed. People said no. Then they said, hey, listen, we found this money somewhere else, and we're going to do it. hey, you elected the officials. If you don't like the Democrats running Kansas City, Missouri, vote them out.
Yeah.
That ain't going to happen.
Well.
And guess what? All these people around Missouri that are Cardinal fans and stuff, they're not voting the Republicans out because they're going to give money to the Royals.
They the Royals. Yes.
I mean, Missouri's just as red as it can get. They're not going to vote Republicans out because they gave money to the Royals.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, well, I didn't like that, but I'm still Republican.
Yes, that's true. I agree with you.
That's real democracy. If we learned as a society, if we could get to a point where we voted people out because we don't like what they do, that'd be great. But we don't. We just get to where we're like, oh, I don't like that person. I don't like the way they talk. Or I don't know. I don't like the one that's in there, so I'll vote for the other one. Well, that's just stupidity. We're not a very good electorate. We're not good at this.
And they know that.
Of course.
They know that. I agree with you. But I just come back to the idea of if it's popular, if it's bipartisan, then let it roll right through. Let it sail through. Mayor Q gets his way. He's got a referendum, and he can say, here's your $600 million. What's the downside?
This is the most politically bipartisan thing I've seen in my lifetime in Kansas City,
I
these
agree.
2 stadiums.
So put it on the ballot.
That doesn't mean people are going to vote yes for it.
Why not?
Because people don't go vote. Republicans stay home.
But you can't tell me it's so popular, but it might get voted down.
If it's not popular, why are they doing it? Nobody's afraid of losing their office.
Well, but exactly. So put it on the ballot.
But you're going to just put everything they spend every year on the ballot.
No,
They're going
but
to
if
move money around. We're going to go do this. Let's put it on the ballot.
I mean, we put an earnings tax on it. That's $300
Okay, but
million.
that's every 5 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, I get that.
And this is once
But
every 30.
Don't you think they make changes in the budget every year? That's why we have
yes,
a council?
yes,
Should they
yes.
put all of that on the ballot?
Well, I mean, you can pick and choose, I guess, if you want.
I mean, everything. Like,
But
we're going to
it's-
take 10% away from trash and give 10% to the police. We put that on the ballot? We elect these people to make these decisions for
Correct.
us.
Yes.
They did it. On
Yes.
both sides of the state line, they made decisions for us. If you hate it, take it up with them. It didn't cost me a nickel. I'm scot-free. I got 2 new stadiums. I love sports. I love Kansas City. I'm happy.
As a Kansas resident, I don't know about that one, though. I don't know.
I'll decide what the ticket prices are, whether I want to go to the game or not.
Yes,
I'll
that's
decide
true.
whether I want to buy a beer or not.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't like taxes in general, but I would much rather have a tax that is on something that I purchase than what I make. That's it. That's my core
sales tax.
philosophy. I think sales taxes, any sort of tax like that, I get to make the decision. Do I want to buy a new car? There's tax on it. You make these decisions. Here's what it costs. I make my decision. When I go to work every day and they're just taking what I make, that's just insane.
But what we never find out about these deals is can they not, like in Kansas, maybe lower the income tax one day because they got to foot the bill for the stadium? We'll never know, but it's possible.
I'll eat my hat if Missouri lowers their income tax to 0. They talk about lowering taxes. It very rarely happens.
Yes.
Trump did it with the big, beautiful bill.
Yes.
Seems like it's helping people to the tune of about $3,000 a year.
Yes.
The average tax return is up, I guess, this year.
Yeah.
So that's working. That's there, but that's pretty rare.
I got mine, and I was like, I saw mine from my accountant, and I was like, damn, Trump, thanks, brother.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's
No,
the rarest
you're
thing
right.
ever. That
You're
never
right.
happens. So somebody did it. Trump did it.
Yes.
Quentin Lucas ain't doing it.
Well, that's true. And these guys
Come
are
on,
throwing
man.
me out. Hey, this was great, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
Kevin and I got to do an hour on this. That's what we got to do.
I'm available.
Hey, man, have a great show. Enjoy the Masters this weekend.
Thank you, buddy.
Kietzman Uncanceled is coming up next. News in a minute on KCMO Talk Radio.